Hit it a little harder.
If you would, join me in prayer, please. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day in which you blessed us with another day to serve you, Lord. I thank you for all of those who are in attendance tonight who care so deeply about our city and its prosperity, not just for a few, but for all of our residents. I ask that you grant us the wisdom to make decisions that will honor you and bring glory to you, that you give us clarity in those decisions to make decisions that are right, not just what's popular. Finally, I ask that you give us your character to treat all with kindness, mercy, and love. I thank you for our city staff, for our other members of council. Lord, I thank you for the Capital Needs Advisory Committee and all those that make the city of Nacogdoches great. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
We'll call the regular meeting, July 11th, 2023, City of Nacogdoches. If you'll stand for the pledge of the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. Next item will be open forum, and I think we do have one item on open forum. It's going to be on.
Michael, can you call in Ann Keenan, please? Ann, can you hear us?
Hello, this is Ann. How's everybody?
Fine, Ann, how are you?
Okay, well, I'm good. I had a subject of interest I just recently read a book about, and I wanted to share it with you. It reminded me of last year when Jim Halbert from New Hampshire, who's descended from East Texans, was checking the Nacogdoches website, and he read our history printed there, and he was disturbed enough to write a letter to the editor. So when I looked at the history page and read it, I thought it was also disturbing because there was no mention in that history of the enslaved population of Nacogdoches whose physical labor created most of the wealth that we enjoy. And it also reminded me of a historical signage that we have as a city posted on North Church Street. One line of that sign reads, quote, "Due to a racial incident, the center of black commerce was moved from North Church Street to Shawnee Street." Now, this is a serious misrepresentation of a really important event in our history. And if any of you don't know what happened on North Church Street, you're not alone. Most people don't know it. But back in the 1920s, Church Street was kind of our little Black Wall Street. There was an African-American silent movie theater, a barbershop, a tailor shop, cafes, and a hotel, and more shopping venues along the side. And there were some nice houses. On weekends, the place was packed. Now, the following information I took from a book by Stephen DeLears. He said that in August of 1924, L.W. Smith placed a proposition before the Nacogdoches City Council calling for moving all Negroes from North Nacogdoches into a ghetto in the south side of town. The Daily Sentinel justified this by saying that, quote, "Our college is over there, and this would make it essential that all the available space be reserved for white residents. Such a removal, quote, would keep the white and colored children from having to crisscross each other's paths as they go and return from school." Now, this was a long time ago, but it was in our parents' and our grandparents' generation. So it's within memory. Because what eventually happened was not recorded in the newspaper, but it was gathered from an oral history. Daisy Whitaker said that East Main and Church Streets were named or called the N-word. The blacks had their businesses along there. Some had big fine at nice homes. One night, the whites came in wearing their white sheets and hoods up their heads and told them to leave and for them to come back the next day and pick up their belongings. Some weren't even allowed to get the stuff that belonged to them. No one ever paid for their land or their belongings. It was a scary time. So these incidents, thinking about them and reading about them, make me think that we need to follow Jim Talbert's advice, which was to state in an official town history the role that people of color played in our community, including the suffering they endured, and to also include any progress that we have made since then. The African American Heritage Project in Nacogdoches is working hard, has been for a long time, to create a museum that will broaden our understanding of all our history. We should support this effort. As we work on our city's comprehensive plan, we need to be sure to try to include ways to tell our complete history with honesty and understanding. And this October, put it on your calendars, the African American Heritage Project will be hosting another Yummy Barbecue fundraiser. So I hope to see everyone there. Thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda is item to be removed from the consent agenda.
I'd like to remove item A from the consent agenda, and just to add, in addition to the very last sentence. The last sentence reads, "The City Council directed the Downtown Advisory Committee to continue the process and to present a final draft to the City Council mid-November." And we need to add, advising the committee to go slowly, not selling the plan, but asking, where are the holes, where are the problems?
Which minutes was that again?
That is the minutes for June 13th, sorry,
Thank you.
and regular agenda item A on those minutes, and I have them written out for you. So I make the motion to add that wording onto that, as we talked about before.
I'll second.
Okay?
Call for a vote or discussion?
Call a question.
Okay. You want to make the motion?
Yeah, I just made the motion.
Okay, I'll
and you
second it.
seconded it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries. Then we'll go into the regular agenda. First item is receive report from the Capital Needs Advisory Committee. Ms. Judy McDonald, Chair of the Capital Needs Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. What I'd like to do is ask John to join me up here as soon as he gets the real information to present together. First of all, it's very important that we recognize the council's wisdom, and not just the three of you that were here at the time, but the two of you that have joined and been very much a part of this committee. You all have attended meetings, you've listened to us individually, and we want to thank you for that. It was very important to us. Now, we have many staff members who were very involved, but we really think that Steve Bartlett deserves an extra thank you because of putting up with mine and John's phone calls, for no other reason, and for all the information that was generated for us to make good decisions. And it's very difficult if you call and they say, well, we can't get that, but instead they say, we'll have it by this afternoon or first thing in the morning. And we did that time and again. And as a result, the committee was able to make good decisions and to have good discussions. I want to thank Councilman Bowden. Y'all assigned him that task, and he put in the time and effort that we all did as well. Now, I know you all know how often we met, but, man, we started the 4th day of January. We have met every 2 weeks, plus there was one time we met 2 weeks in a row, plus we divided into groups and they did individual meetings, and plus we came back to go through that, and sometimes these 2-hour meetings, and we met for 2 hours minimally, but sometimes those went a little long. But we really do appreciate the staff, and but I want to right now ask for it to come up and let me recognize the committee, because several of them are here tonight, and I think if you look how we voted, it was unanimous. Now, we were missing a few members for first one reason or the other. We contacted, John and I contacted each of them after it was over with to let them know what had happened. I called Matt in Colorado and gave him a report because we wanted to be sure, because so many people made such a strong effort and put in so many hours, and they, of course, did it like you do, volunteer with no compensation but a lot of trouble. But I would, if with your permission, Mayor, may I ask the committee to
Sure.
please stand? Those of you who are on the committee. Now, these are the people who did all the work. And John and I remained as unbiased first, but we also tried to keep that. We did not make our needs or our wants known. We tried very hard to make it a committee that worked without being strongly influenced by us or by Councilman Bolden or by Steve Bartlett or any of the staff. They gave their reports as well as they could without giving any idea of where they. So at that point, I think what I want to do is turn this over to John and let him go through the figures that you have in front of you and that I will be on the monitor so others can read it. John?
Thank you, Judy. Sure. So, as Mayor Emeritus McDonald mentioned, from January the 5th through June the 27th, we had a total of 15 meetings. And we looked at $144,042,208 worth of potential capital projects that have been put forth by the city staff. We narrowed our focus down to items that were general obligation specific. We did not look at any of the city's enterprise or a revenue type. And that's primarily because the city staff is still in the midst of conducting a utility rate survey. And without the utility rate survey data, we didn't feel comfortable digging too deep into that, other than to say that there is work that will need to be done in the future. So the committee has recommended, and again, these are recommendations for your consideration for potential bond. That was our charge. 7 potential items that could be put as propositions on a bond for the city, for a general obligation bond. The first, the functional area is the airport, and that would include construction of a new terminal, fuel center, apron, access road, and parking. A critical component of this recommendation is made that this would not be put on a ballot unless the city had matching funds. So it's a recommendation contingent upon matching funds. If matching funds are not available, then the committee doesn't recommend that it be put on there. The second item was fire stations. We spent a considerable amount of time as a committee. We toured all of the fire stations. We set up a separate subcommittee to look at fire stations. We engaged various members of the fire department on multiple occasions that came to our meetings. Spoke with contractors, architects, and the final recommendation from the committee is on the screen, but it's to relocate fire station number 1 and fire station number 3. That's the fire station on Old Lufkin Road and the fire station at the intersection of East Austin and North Street. And then to consolidate fire station 2, which is the fire state at the intersection of MLK and East Main, and fire station 5, which is Central Station next door, into a new central fire station. And that's at a cost of $16,730,000. That dollar figure is $120,000 more than it would cost to renovate all 5 fire stations. And we thought that in the long-term interest of the community, it would be better to build something that's new and is better located. So that was the second recommendation. Recommendation number 3 was downtown. This is somewhat aligned with the Downtown Master Plan Initiative, but this is $435,000 for Main Street and Festival Park electrical upgrades. The current electrical grid downtown and in Festival Park can't handle the capacity that's needed when we have festivals. And then it's also designed to have consolidated dumpster sites, some handicapped access ramps, and then sidewalk improvements. Item number 4 is storm drainage. That's $5,900,000. This would take care of critical storm drainage reconstruction. We have a lot of a really old and dilapidated storm drainage throughout Nacogdoches. Within the past years, I think you're all aware that we've had several storm drains that have collapsed under people's houses, under people's driveways, that have cost millions of dollars to repair. And this would help get that fixed. This would take care of all of the tier 1. Those are the critical projects that have been identified by the city staff that need to be fixed now. And then some of the tier 2 projects, which would be the next ones that would become tier 1. So they're really urgent, and then the next batch. Item number 5 is facilities. That's Sunset Cemetery office and equipment. There's an old building at Sunset Cemetery. It used to be a chapel. It was turned into an office, and now it's pretty much a maintenance shed. And there was $425,000 recommended for that. The parks, we have a lot of parks in the city. We have community parks, we have neighborhood parks. Some of the parks are in pretty good shape. Some of the parks are kind of in an embarrassing state. The recommendation from the committee is $2.2 million to renovate parks, which includes playgrounds, restrooms, and fitness stations. The last item is streets and sidewalks. This includes a citywide street rebuild of all the tier 1 street projects and select tier 2 projects, with a separate $1 million allocated just for sidewalk improvements within the community, for a total of $11 million. And that would be total if all items were placed on a bond as propositions. That would be a grand total of $43,990,000. The slides are jumping around magically without me touching them.
That's Michael upstairs.
Okay, thanks, Michael. So there's a fairly tight schedule window that the city needs to operate in if you choose to proceed with a bond. On July the 11th, which is today, if you all decide to move forward, by July the 13th, the city needs to engage bond counsel to work out the details, as well as with the financial advisors. On August the 9th, that's the first day, that's the earliest that you could adopt an ordinance calling for a bond resolution. August the 21st is the last day that you could adopt an ordinance calling for a bond resolution. Then that goes into October 23rd for first day of early voting, and November the 7th would be the day that the bond would be voted on. That's election day. On the report that we've given you, it's item 6A in your folders. We also studied a few other items that we feel are worth your consideration. One of the things that we looked at was the city should consider the acquisition of emergency vehicle preemption system. This is a system that uses GPS. It's integrated with our emergency vehicles. It automatically controls traffic lights at intersections. So if an emergency vehicle is coming down North Street, when it gets far enough away, based on the GPS data, it would turn the North Street portion of the intersection lights at East Austin and North green for the emergency vehicle. Everyone else would have a red light. If that truck indicated that it was going to turn left with its left blinker, the emergency vehicle would get the green arrow. So it stops traffic where it needs to be stopped, and it promotes traffic flow where it needs to promote. On average, nationally, these systems save between 10 and 11 seconds per traffic light. So you can see if you're going down North Street, you could cut a minute or more off of your response time, where minutes count. The second item that the committee recommends the city reevaluate are street maintenance fees. We currently collect in taxes, the city, or not in taxes, but in fees, in street maintenance fees, approximately $700,000 annually. Our annual average street maintenance expenditure is $1.25 million. So the money that we're bringing in to maintain our streets can't keep up with the cost of maintaining the streets. So we recommend that the city council take a look at that and see if there's something that can be done to adjust the funds available to keep the streets maintained. The last thing that we were charged with was evaluating the city's bonding capacity and the potential impacts on the tax rate. At the time that we were conducting the study, the Central Appraisal District was not able to give us a net appraised value for the city. They weren't able to give us data on what the net appraised value would be after 65 and over freezes and homestead exemptions were in place. I believe that some preliminary data is now available, and I'd like to defer to Ms. Kerbo to address that if that's okay with the council.
Good evening, council. Yes, I spoke with Jason Mollett at the appraisal district over the last couple of days, just most recently about this afternoon. And he is not in a position to give us any type of certified numbers. So we are still estimates. Their software conversion is getting better. They are much closer to having good numbers for us now. But he has some estimates that he feels pretty confident are going to be pretty close to what he will be certifying. Now, keep in mind, state law requires him to provide those certified estimates to us by the July the 25th. So tonight, I can give you some pretty good estimates. July the 25th, we will have what he will certify to us and what we can use as far as building our budget and building the ballot information for each of the propositions. Currently, as of today, a good estimate of taxable value for the city is a little over 2.28 billion. That is up from 2.11 this past year. Keep in mind that the tax freeze went into effect for over 65 and disabled persons in this past year. So this will be the first year that we have to back out their total taxable value when assessing and making any new debt service rates. That has been the holdup, is trying to place a value on those taxable values. Today, he sent me an estimate, totally uncertified at this point, of about 249 million. So if you take the 249 million, subtract that from the 2.28 billion, gives you about $1.85 million of taxable value that we can use to fund the $44 million potential bond program. Billion. So what that equates to is about a 16-cent property tax impact. I have run scenarios if the numbers are less than what he thinks today or more. A good estimate, I don't think they're going to change more than a penny either way, is 15 to 17 cents is going to be your property tax debt impact of the $44 million worth of projects that are proposed to be on the ballot. So you're looking at 15 to 17 cents. Keep in mind that the debt rate was reduced 7.1 cents last year when we did not do the CO and we had no new debt. So we reduced the debt 7.1. This will raise it 16, 17, 15. Depends on where we land in with the actual values in July. But that's as good as we can do right now, is to give you a band. 15 to 17 cents is going to be the impact of $44 million. You have any questions?
I do have one
Oh,
question
okay.
for you, Jan. Pam,
That's mine.
you know, we're allowed to, I can't remember the percentage, we're only allowed to raise taxes some percentage. So how will that impact?
So that's your maintenance and operations. It's 3.5% is the limit. Debt, there is no limit on the debt service rate. The debt service rate is a whole separate thing. Yeah. Yeah, I don't have it.
John is going to continue, but I want to tell you that as we worked with this, John had estimated 16 and a half. Am I right?
Yes, ma'am.
And so we have fallen into what we believe is the right category.
So that's my report, our report, pending any questions that you may have.
public comment.
Yeah, we're gonna do public comment, and then we'll have you
Okay,
back up here.
great, thanks, appreciate your time.
Okay, we'll open it up to public comment now. If anyone would like to speak, come forward, please. State your name. Nobody.
Oh, somebody.
Okay. Come on, Helena.
My name is Helena Abdullah, and I'm just a citizen of Nacogdoches. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't come up and say hello to all the people I know on the board. I didn't get here in time to say hello to you guys. Every year, when I get my tax rate, I always go to the tax appraisal office, and I talk to anybody that'll listen and everybody that wants to. Because when my taxes go up, my insurance goes up, everything goes up except my Social Security check. It remains the same. It remains flat every year. So every year I have to go down and plead my case to the tax office because I'm a single homeowner. And it doesn't feel good when you have to go down there every year and beg to, hey, don't touch my money that I'm giving you. It's almost sometimes it feels as if the elder in our communities are the ones who are the homeowners, basically, and we're the ones bearing a lot of the burden of the tax. Because we've got so many people here in Nacogdoches that live in apartment complexes. They are renting from different people. And even though they're renting, the owner of the house that they're renting may be receiving some type of tax break, but normally those houses are on housing. And they're getting a little bit more than a normal rent. And when I say normal, comparable rent to what people's income are. So everybody gets a break with the old folks, me included. I'm 73 now. So every penny that goes out needs to be somewhat, if I can hold on to it, comparable to what I have coming in. So I'm speaking for everybody my age that has a very little retirement that's dwindling as we speak because of the economy and don't have the resources to pull it in or the physical ability to pull in more. Please give us some consideration when y'all talk about the tax rates. Because we own the properties. We own and have always owned, and we try to keep it up. We are law-abiding citizens most of the time. You know, except when you're arguing with somebody at a grocery store. But other than that, you know, please give us the consideration when y'all thinking about these tax rates, and all these other things look really good. When I hear millions of dollars going for improvement over here where nobody lives, and improvements over here where nobody lives, I just want to know, where's the balance? You know, we have to have a balance. If you're spending $44 million for some type of improvement, and I'm not saying sidewalks are not a good improvement. We need them on Butt Street, on MLK too. People walking on the street. When you're looking at numbers being thrown out, and you keep thinking, oh, shucks, that's a lot. Excuse me for saying, that's a hell of a lot more than I get coming in. You know, so as I said, we're trying to find a balance. So please, when y'all consider allowing someone to raise our taxes and to, you know, take away a little bit more from my Social Security check, think about that. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Mayor,
Go ahead.
just for Ms. Kerbo, can you, I know that we went through this last year on the senior tax freeze. Can you explain that just in general terms, what that means, what we did last year?
Sure. Okay. So last year, council voted to do two things. One is they froze over 65 and disabled persons' taxes at the rate that they were taxed this year. So your taxes will not go up from the point that what you paid this year. That is your max that you will pay. 65 and older and disabled persons. We also doubled the homestead exemption for those same two classes. So you now have twice the exemptions. Then taxes will be frozen. So the taxes that you pay this year will be your max going forward. So when I was saying a while ago, the value is 2.28 billion, and then the over 65, the freeze value, I have to subtract that.
Right.
In essence, what that means is everybody that is over 65 or disabled persons, that freeze, anything that we do on the debt rate does not affect their taxes. Their taxes, if it was $1,200 this year, it will be $1,200 next year. Could be $1,100. It can go down, but it can never go over that $1,200 as far as future, unless you do significant improvements to your home. If you build onto your home, that of course is new value. But as of now, rest assured, your taxes are frozen, and so that is for those two classes. So the impact of this bond election will not be borne by those taxpayers that are under that freeze. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
And that's on a homestead.
That's a homestead.
So you should
Yes,
have never had
you
to
have a
worry
homestead.
about that,
Yeah.
Helena.
Yeah.
At all. And when you were 65, that should have been frozen.
Well, we just adopted the freeze.
Okay, I'm
This is the
sorry.
first
Okay.
year.
I'm
You'll
sorry.
see that the effect of it. This will be the
Okay.
first time.
All right.
Yes, yes.
Your city council, and I'm going to speak directly to you, we did think about you. I thought about my neighbors in my ward whose income wasn't increasing, and we collaboratively came together, and we actually made our jobs a lot harder. We made Pam's life a lot harder when we were considering debt, but your taxes will not go up 1 penny for city taxes. Thank you, Ms. Kerbo.
May I speak? Or do we have another?
All right, good evening. I'm Michelle Cox, and just as a citizen, I wanted to express my support of the bond. I can see that we're behind on a lot of things. If we have things collapsing, falling apart, then we've waited too long already. I think that it's really important that we do look at the overall safety and wellness and health of our city, and so taking the bond approach, we can take care of the things that we're very behind on, so I'm in support of it. And I hope that that you all will not shelf some really important work that's been done, and also it would, I see it as a big waste of taxpayer dollars as well if it does get set aside, but I think it's important that we go forward. And as a homeowner and mother of 6, 5 at home, everything's getting more expensive for me too, and we're in the middle bracket, I guess, but I did have a question about the 15 to 17 cents. What is that off of? Is that per year or off of $1,000, or where does that number work? I was just wondering about that.
Per $100,000.
Per 100,000?
Per $100 valuation,
per one.
Ms.
Okay.
Kerbo.
Okay, I thought there was something. Okay, so I just want to know about that. And then,
Do you understand?
yeah, so
Okay.
per $100, or per $100 that you're paying in property tax, it's gonna go up 15 to 17 cents. Okay, so I just wanted to clarify that.
No, let her explain it.
Okay.
That's what we were actually talking about.
That's what I want, that's what I want you to understand.
Yeah, no, so I did calculate that today. So for every, let me put my glasses on. So for every penny that we raise the debt rate, that impacts an average homeowner by $11.89 a year for every penny. So the average homeowner, after exemptions, the appraised value for Nacogdoches, the average is $118,000 after exemptions, okay? That means a homeowner would pay $11.89 per penny. I just said we're gonna be between 15 and 17 cents for this. So you're looking at between $178 and $202 annual increase to fund everything in that $44 million. If the value of your home is $118,000 after exemption. So it's about $200 a year, something give or take.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Yes, sir.
I'm Charles Massey, and you're going to see me a lot. But looking at this bond, I'm all supportive of that, but I saw nothing about police force. Building a structure for a new building for the police department. This building's been down here for how many years? how many people or how many police, enforcement are we behind that we don't have patrolling the streets? We have one traffic cop to maintain speeds around here, especially during the college times and all. But we're behind on our police force. Am I right or wrong?
You're right.
Are we defunding the police or what?
No.
Not at all.
No, we need to upgrade their pay. We need to get police force. We can have the most beautiful city, but if it's not safe, we need that police force,
Can we actually did institute a pay raise for police, and we actually have several more police officers who are coming into the system, and we totally agree with you. Now, the building is not something that we've handled yet, but we have worked hard with the police to increase the number of policemen. In fact, I think we just agreed to unfreeze 3 positions too. So that's something
We're a lot
to help.
further along now than we were
A year
a
ago.
year ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand, you're new to the position
Yes,
and all
sir, I
like
am.
that, but, just some ideas, because when I drive around the city, because I used to drive a school bus for Nacogdoches, and, these, parks and playground, the vandalism, I just can't see spending the money on something like that. Because unless you have cameras up to maintain what's going on in these parks, because there's crime that goes into them, after hours and all, and they are vandalized. And I imagine the city spends quite a bit cleaning up those parks. That's one of the items I don't know, I just don't agree with, I'm all for the fire department and all like that, but, they do have some nice facilities as compared to what the police have. And they're pretty well staffed too, but, that's my comment.
Thank you, sir, very much. Anybody else? Ms. Ward?
Yes. I'm Rhonda Ward, a concerned citizen. I have a question about the fire departments. I know we're spending $16 million. It says you're gonna relocate 1 and 3. So is this also, are we buying more land? Are we utilizing maybe land the city already owns? And have we taken into consideration selling these properties and what that would that add as far as reduce the cost of that? I guess that's my question. And then also with consolidating 2 and 6, where are you consolidating? Are you putting it, which one are they?
I'll have to defer to Mr. Callahan on that.
Okay. It said consolidating, so I was trying to figure, are they gonna keep it at Maine and Martin Luther? Is that where that's going?
I have no idea. Again, I'll defer to Mr.
I
Callahan.
just had a question about where all that was. Hi.
So to address Mrs. Ward's question, the specific parcels of land have not been identified by the city staff. We didn't go pick a piece of property, but the recommendation, just to give you some background, the reason Station 2 is where Station 2 is on East Main is because when it was built in the 50s, the fire trucks could not make it up East Main, and they had to put a station there. They're less than a mile and a half from each other.
Right.
So it doesn't make sense to
I
have two
get the,
stations, right?
the common sense.
So
of
the
consolidation,
location
yes.
will be somewhere, and somewhere's a fairly broad geographic area, because again, the city hasn't purchased the land.
So the 16 million doesn't have land acquisition?
No, it does. The 16 million
Okay.
considers land acquisition. They went to the Central Appraisal District, looked at comps for property in that area, and they're guesstimating for the acreage that they would need about $220,000 for the land. It will be somewhere off of University, somewhere around University, Maine, MLK, somewhere in that area. But the specific parcel hasn't been identified. Station 1 would move north on North Street. Specific parcel not identified there. And Station 3 would move to the west along the loop.
Right, okay. I just know where
Yes,
the
ma'am.
one is on North Street is very prime real estate.
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, I think you could cut this 16 million. It wouldn't be just a drop in the bucket if you
Right,
sell all these
and
properties.
remember,
So
remember with
that's
any,
just-
with any of these items, the city isn't forced, if the taxpayers vote for a $16.73 million bond, the city's not forced to spend $16.73 million. If they
But
say,
everybody
gee, we
usually
could,
does.
but they're not forced to, so,
Yeah, they-
if we have, good faith in our council.
Right, okay. Well, that was just my question. I wanted to make sure that had at least been considered.
Yeah.
Of-
We can put that property that, like number 2, back on the tax roll, right? If we decide to sell it. The one on North Street could go back on the tax
Yes, sir.
roll.
Yes.
And we could sell it.
Downtown station could too.
Yes, that's what I guess I'm looking at, and that
Yes.
money could come back to the coffers
Yes.
for the citizens.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, yes, okay, that was my question.
Thank you.
Is that, Mr. Bartlett, is that true? Because I thought you said something the other day that the property couldn't be appraised at its commercial value. It had, if the city sells it, it has to go to a bid or something like that?
So if we sell property generally, and it's not being sold to another governmental entity, just to the public, then they are put on an auction block, and we do literally auction it off. And we can have minimums and things that keep it for selling for $1. But certainly, it's a fair market value sale by auction to the public, so that's correct. So it doesn't just go to a realtor and put a for sale sign at it, so. And also, just to note, when we sell those properties, they don't necessarily tag to the project. In other words, Station 1, if Station 1 moves and we sell that property, it's not necessarily a depletion of the cost of the new Station 1. It does go back in the general fund, and understand that, kind of back in the same coffers. But we did not discount that in that 16 million number. We just showed the purchase of new land, knowing that if we had a sale, it would technically offset it, but it's not literally out of that 16 million. It's just going back in the bank account, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, any other comments from the audience? Yes, ma'am?
Hello again, council. My name is Elizabeth Gaudette. Sorry. And I just wanted to comment a few things. I am almost homeowner in Nacogdoches, and I went to some of the capital needs meetings. I went to the fire department ones especially, and I just wanted to tell y'all that I support everything that this committee has put forth to y'all. All of it is very important, and all of it is things that have been neglected maybe, or pushed to the side over the past because of a lot of different reasons. I did want to speak to the tax burden a little bit. More younger people are coming to Nacogdoches, and they are bringing their families. And one of the difficulties they find is finding affordable housing that they can actually purchase, which, if they did, would add to our tax base. So I think the city needs to consider, that there needs to be more affordable housing. I had a better way to put that, but I don't remember what it was. Just that, younger people, 35, 45, they do want to buy a house. They want to be homeowners. And so they're looking for houses, and it's hard to find in Nacogdoches. And then the other thing I wanted to address was I wanted to ask Mr. Bray about the actual crime rates and vandalism in our parks. Is that really a big deal? Is the city putting out a lot of money to, fix those things?
You want to ask who?
Mr. Bray.
Mr. Bray, yeah, come on.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Brian Bray, your Community Services Director. And unfortunately, Mayor, I don't have the stats with me, but last year, there was a question that was raised of how much crime is in the parks. And so I met with the police chief, and we got the stats for a 15-month period. The highest crime rate, and that is meaning incidents where the police came out and something occurred. That doesn't mean that they had to have written a citation, but the police arrived at that park, was 12. And that was Lake Nacogdoches. 8 of those 12 were boating accidents, intoxicated boater type incidents. So it's not, yes, it's a crime, but it's not the type of vandalism crime that people, I think, are referring to here this evening. So overall, the parks that have been improved, we've had, I can't say a zero vandalism rate, but very minimal vandalism on all of the new parks. The parks that are older, people tend to vandalize things that are older. It's almost like the broken window syndrome. Did that answer your question?
Sure, yes, thank you. Thank you for your time,
All
council.
right, you bet. Okay, anybody else? Okay, there being none, we'll open it up for discussion now. Who wants to go first? Go.
I have some questions, John, if I could.
Yes, sir.
It's budgeted, now, first of all, let me say that the people that signed the petition and opposed the certificate of obligation didn't oppose the cost, they opposed not getting to vote. So that's the first thing about the bond I think is important. The committee put it together. They want the people to vote on it, so I agree with that. That's the basic principle for me. But there's some questions I have. It's through the Brown Reynolds and Waterford Architects that were hired for this recommendation. It was estimated at $440 a square foot, but I think you said, or maybe I've heard recently, that it's $575 a square foot?
It depends. That's the best answer. In Central Texas, when we were on the committee, a friend of mine owns a construction company in Leander. He builds large municipal buildings.
Right.
I called him to look at the numbers and see what he thought. And he said where he lives and works, the Austin area, it's about $550 a square foot. Our staff went and looked at, comparables here, and the 440 estimate that BRW gave seems to be appropriate for East Texas, but we won't know until it goes out for bid. But if you go to Morton Sons and different construction forecasting places, that's probably right. Some of our committee members, Dr. Margaret Forbes, went and did some research, came in with even a lower price of $310. So the reason I say it depends, it's going to depend on when it gets put out for bid. But I think you could be safe to say somewhere between $310 and $550. But I feel confident with the BRW numbers.
And did you follow their recommendations on the prices for these different stations?
No, sir. If you look at the number that we came up with, we went back to the fire department and said, y'all are gonna have to make some changes to get things down. So the square footage of the stations were reduced on what our final recommendation is. Now, what the BRW didn't, FF&E furnitures, fixtures, and equipment, and some of the A&E charges. Which
the
final
bond issue does include all that?
Our 16 million recommendation includes cost of construction, cost of land acquisition, engineering, architectural fees, and furnitures, fixtures, and equipment. Yes, sir. So it's a more comprehensive number than just the cost of construction.
So in this recommendation that I read here, it says fire station number 1, new construction. That's $4 million. Now, it may be different than your figure. I'm just telling you what they said. And then it said fire station 2 and 5 are combined for new construction. That's $9,240,000. And then you got fire station number 3, new construction. That's what you have on this here. So you have relocate fire stations 1 and 3, consolidate fire stations 2 and 5 into a new central fire station. But there's also fire station number 4, remodel addition, and fire station number 5 again, because you combined the 5. So it has another new fire station. Is that not in this bond?
There is
I honestly don't know.
No, sir. We have not recommended a fire station number 5. The fire department has not recommended a fire station number 5. We will have a consolidated central and 2, which that's 2 and 5 consolidated. Station 1, station 3 new, and you will still have station 4. So we will be decreasing by 1 fire station. One of the main reasons that we're recommending decrease the number of fire stations, we don't have enough firemen to adequately man all the fire trucks during a given shift. You need at least 3 firemen, minimum standard, to man a fire truck. And when we have currently 5 stations, when you count people sick, on vacation, on training, people quit, people retired, all the manpower issues, it's really difficult for Nacogdoches to have, right now, 15 firemen on duty at any given time. So that's one of the reasons that the fire department is recommending that we drop down from 5 stations to 4 stations.
When they talk about the distance between fire stations, is that gonna affect our ISO or insurance or whatever they?
We have no idea. The only way, and that's not a flippant answer, the only way to find out if your ISO rating is gonna change is to have ISO, the Insurance Service Organization, to come down and do a complete study.
And shouldn't we do that before we commit to this or
You
not?
can't. You can't, because they're not gonna give you a rating based on what you might do in the future. When they come down, they look at fire department manning. Right now, currently, that is the number one issue that they look at in determining an ISO rating. Do you have enough firemen to put out a fire? Then they look at the city's water supply. How much water pressure do you have all across the city? How many fire hydrants do you have? How well maintained is that water system? Then they look at the communication system. How good is the radio dispatch? How fast is the radio dispatch? Do we have quality radio transmission all across town where the fire department goes? And then they look at this distance from the station to the fire. And a general rule of thumb that they use is 1.5 miles. That's one way they calculate it. Another way they can calculate it, if the city uses computer-aided dispatch, which we use in Nacogdoches, is to look at the actual response time to the fire. And I'll let Keith and the fireman in the back correct me, but I believe first truck needs to be on scene, the first apparatus, within 4 minutes, and the rest of the apparatus needs to be there at 10. And that's just to meet those minimum standards to get water on the fire. But regardless, wherever we have a fire in Nacogdoches, because we're typically only running 12 guys at work at the stations, all 12 firemen and all the trucks have to be at the fire to get the fire put out. So that the ISO rating to find out what's you just can't call them. I did call them and said, if we moved our fire stations, what would it be? And the guy said, it depends. It depends on what your water is, how many guys you've got, all those things that I just mentioned. So it's not an easy answer. It's a complicated answer.
Will any part of the city suffer from the reconfiguration of the fire departments? Will they have less protection than they had before?
There may be some that have less protection than before, but some will have more protection than they have now. Currently, but you're looking at this 1.5 mile range, and that's only valid. I don't know, maybe at 10 o'clock at night when all the firemen are at the fire station.
But is it valid to that one person that lives in less coverage?
Yes, sir. I'm sure that it is. But because you've got this imaginary amoeba shape that's the 1.5 mile radius that's going to get shifted a little bit. And as development increases in Nacogdoches and people move and new subdivisions go in, they may or may not be in that specific 1.5 mile buffer. It's like, if my house catches on fire when a couple of the stations guys are eating lunch at Knackburger, I'm in great shape. But if they're kinfolk, I'm gonna have to wait a little bit, because that just is a fact of our manning.
So should we put on more firemen rather than new buildings?
I think, well, that wasn't part of our remit,
okay.
but I think that's something the city should also consider. But that's not gonna be a general obligation bond issue. That gets back to your M&O rate instead of your INS rate.
Okay.
Did that?
Yeah,
Okay.
thanks. I'm
Yes,
just
sir. Yes, sir.
learning.
Very good question. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a couple, if
Yes,
that's
sir.
okay.
Sure.
You and I talked about this in our one-on-two meeting with the co-chairs. In the beginning of this process, you were I don't want to say, you were as unbiased as a person could be. You wanted to come at it from a logical and well-thought process. How did you personally land on this? What brought you to this recommendation?
Seeing everything and talking to people and trying to look at the facts in an unbiased manner. The committee, literally every day, we have been looking at the numbers, at the data, and that's, I looked at the facts and I, came to a decision. If you look at the committee, and I'll use me for an example, when we started, we did a straw poll. We had a huge list of capital improvement items that the city staff had put forward because they were asked, give us a list, soup to nuts, of what you would like to be considered. And I came in at $29,984,000. Today, I'm telling you, $43,990,000. We had another committee member that came in at $62,500,000, and he is now at $43,990,000. So we've gone from the low up and from the high down to that consensus point. And I really do think it's because we've been looking at the data, going to the sites, looking up cost estimates. And there's always going to be, if it was just me all by myself in isolation, I might do it this way or I might do it that way. But as a group, this was the group consensus and recommendation. When we had one individual that, was it $20,000? Or not $20,000, $20 million. I got to add some zeros there, $20 million. So, we've come in, all over the place on this, but we ended up at this one point. So I think it's because we were looking at the information that was available.
Thank you.
I think it's important to know that it was unanimous.
Yeah, I mean, this recommendation that we're presenting to you, everyone that was at the meeting voted affirmative for this recommendation.
And
Yes,
I
sir.
want to look at it as a comment on a personal level, because when I first walked in and looked at the committee, I was apprehensive that they could come to a consensus decision because of the expertise and knowledge in that room. I said they will never come as an agreement. But my fears was unfounded because they put a lot of effort into not just one single item, and they would do their research, bring valuable information, suggestions back to the committee, and with honest feedback and on specific issues and concerns. And thanks to Judy, who kept them focused and made sure that they was meeting what the city council had asked them to do. And one of the things that I was going to send to John was John was able to decipher complex information as to where we could all understand what the committee was proposing, giving of their opinion, recommendation, and advice. And on a personal level, and I'm grateful for the time that I spent in this committee. I was amazed at how the team worked together. I mean, I wasn't expecting that, but the conclusion was everybody had a part in it. Everybody done their research, and it was a tireless effort that they put into this. But they came pretty well close to the same amount in the end. And the goal of this committee was, in my opinion, was met. And if this bond is not on the November ballot, it's going to be a disservice to the citizens of Nacogdoches. And that's just my personal opinion.
Yes, sir.
John, do you have any idea how much we're going to need in revenue bonds?
Yes, sir. And again, this is an estimate.
Because this would be,
You mean total?
yeah.
Total indebtedness for the city?
No.
No.
No, the revenue bonds, like, there's going to be.
Oh, revenue bonds.
Yes.
Yes, I need, I have to get my book, but I
And what
want to
would they
say.
be, and what would they be for?
So and correct me if I'm wrong, back up hard drive, but I want to say it's around $60 million.
Okay.
Is that fair
And that-
number?
and that would-
$60 million in revenue bonds. And that is primarily focused on sanitary sewer. So that's from your toilet to the water treatment plant.
Okay,
And then fresh water, and that's from Lake Nacogdoches or the well to your tap.
okay. And that would be paid by,
It could be paid by a bunch of different things, and part of that's gonna be contingent upon what that utility rate study tells
Okay,
us. But there could be, the city could just go, you know what, we can, raise the utility rates by a couple of cents. Or the city can say, we're gonna need to do a utility rate bond, which is a bond that is paid for by the increase. So if you need a lot of money really fast, most of these projects can't be done in one fell swoop. They're gonna have to be staged over time because they're significant projects.
okay.
There are low-interest partial debt forgiveness loans. So there's a lot of things that the city could do to finance those.
Okay. And will y'all bring that back to us whenever it's time, or, okay?
Go ahead, no, go ahead.
Our recommendation is that this committee continue after the November election. And when you do that, there are several ways to do that. We're not saying everybody that's on the committee will stay. I'm not, but others will and will continue to serve. But then you can draw terms, just like make it a standing committee. And when you do that, part of our recommendation is to bring them back and let them look at these same needs as utility needs, Randy, so.
Okay, let me just do a little history, and somebody might have already mentioned this, and I wasn't on the council, I'm new. I know that there were COs that were an option, last year, or ever how long ago. And there was a petition that killed it. I signed it. And the reason I signed it is because I wanted to have a voice in what we were gonna do in this city. This is the most democratic way that you can do this. You can put each item that you have here on this ballot, and you can do them all, and I hope you do. Or if you don't like something, you can vote against it. Now, that's democracy, And I hope this council proceeds. We're not gonna, we can proceed. We're gonna talk to our bond council and everything like that, but there's not a right answer on this. You can sit here and have another committee, and I guarantee it's gonna be different. Then you have another committee after that, and it's gonna be different. Well, it's gotta stop sometimes, and we've gotta fix, and this is the time to do it. That's all I have to say.
I just have a question. I love democracy also. In fact, I have that starred as one of the things. I just think it's wonderful that we live in a democracy, that we can do this. And I wanted to, I appreciate you, Mr. Callahan, when I asked you about the ISO rating, and you told me, and I said, well, can't we call? And you spent how many hours calling ISO to just find out that they can't
About
rate
2
it?
hours, yes, ma'am.
2 hours, thank you. I owe you 2 hours, Mr.
No,
Callahan.
ma'am, you don't. I volunteered for this committee.
But I really appreciate it. I did, this is just brief because I read the Brown Reynolds Watford and Architects report, and I did see that extra fifth station again popping up. So I'm really glad that this really is the complete thing, except for remodeling of Fire Station 4, is that correct?
Remodeling Fire Station number 4 is not in our
Okay.
bond recommendation. There is monies that the city has through
regular
ARPA and other
funds,
means
right.
that could be dedicated to Fire Station number 4.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's okay.
No.
Just come back to me. I just have 2 little questions.
Well, I forgot what I was gonna say. Go ahead.
So one of my bigger questions is there's some items on here that don't appear to me to have the 20-year shelf life. And I know I asked you this, and I know I told you I was going to ask this. Everything I read about when we're going to have a bond, it should be something that lasts 30 to 50 years. So could you speak to that?
Yes, ma'am. I mean, most of the things that are on here, not most, but a lot of them, you know, roads. Roads don't have a 20-year shelf life. Wish they did. We, as I mentioned earlier, we haven't been able to keep up with the maintenance on our roads. So as time marches on, our roads get into a greater state of disrepair. And we've got to spend some money to get the roads up to a manageable state. And then there's that second component that I mentioned, that the council needs to relook at how we generate annual revenue to maintain the streets. And so that's,
Her question.
well, that,
That's part of it, but also there are other items that are not the
that are
roads. Right.
storm drainage typically will last a long time. Now, there are some other items on here that one might not think, you know, as Mayor Johnson mentioned a couple of weeks ago, that's like getting a mortgage on a refrigerator. And if you haven't watched the minutes from our July or June 27th meeting, I encourage you to go back and watch the presentation. Part of the discussion specifically centered around three things: the airport, the downtown, and the facilities. So the airport, downtown upgrades, and Sunset Cemetery offices and equipment. We talked about, you know, is there a match? Well, at the time, no, there wasn't a match. And we talked about taking that off of the bond and reducing the total amount to $36,690,000. But we didn't want to be short-sighted because it's not August the 21st yet. So with match, so that's one item. Third, in the Sunset Cemetery 425, we talked about removing those from the bond, but the committee felt strongly enough that those are two things that need to be done, that we wanted to make sure that it was on here so you all saw that the committee had a really strong feeling about those. So that's why they're there. Whether they end up on an actual bond or that's something that y'all say, hey, wait a minute, I've got $435,000 in this drawer, let's just cash flow that thing.
We were talking about selling popcorn at our meetings to help raise some, so maybe. I guess this is also a question for Ms. Kerbo. You like the popcorn idea, I think. I'm not sure about putting something on a bond that doesn't have the life of what we're borrowing for. Is that a concern? I mean, will the bonding agent, I don't know how that works, will they look and say, wait a minute? Because I remember last time when we talked about it, it appeared to me that we were borrowing over a 10-year period for some items, or 20-year, and then 30-year for some other items. Could you help me out here? Save me from myself here.
I might can, so with the COs, what we were looking at is part of those items were a 20-year life and part of them were 25-year life. As far as legally, that's gonna be a bond counsel and a financial advisor question that once we talk to them in a few days, those are the kinds of things, but they're gonna direct us to do as best, you know, a life that works. Now, keep in mind those estimates that I gave you earlier, I'm glad y'all brought that up. Those are based on a 25-year for the whole 44 million. So that 15 to 17 cents is based on doing 25 years. Now, that does not mean that each of, you know, if the airport properties in the down, we can look at, you know, the airport may have been a 25 and, you know, the downtown could have been a 20. So we will get a lot more detailed in the actual, as we start to work on the proposition language of what those timeframes would be, but that's part of something that the bond counsel and the financial advisors will direct y'all with that.
That's what I was thinking, so we don't have to worry about that right now.
Council members, you do not have to take that money all at one time either. So if you look at, let's say, parks, well, let's look at the cemetery office. If you decide to take that money, it could be paid back much quicker than that. And you didn't, because you could take it now or you can take it in the length of time that you have the bond.
Well,
Maybe that would help.
but I think
But it's
that-
still a long time.
Right. And also, rarely do people, but they do pay it off ahead of time.
But I would say something, there was a concern about the fifth fire station. The only people that are gonna build a fifth fire station in the next 2 years are the 5 of you sitting at this bench. And if y'all don't wanna build the fifth fire station, it's not happening. If y'all don't want to do a, you know, if you decide we're gonna pay a $435 note off over 30 years, that's because y'all decided to do that, so.
We'll have to address that.
Yes, sir.
Police station next, because that is an important part.
Now,
that
the
Mr.
reason that our committee did not address the police station is that it did not bubble up from staff. The police department did not address any issues at all.
Okay,
on
one
that.
other question I have. Okay, the 7.3 million on the airport, okay. If TxDOT matches that, would that mean 14.6 million?
It depends on the match. I mean,
Okay.
it wasn't a
It was not
one-to-one,
dollar for
it
dollar.
wasn't a
Okay.
90-10, we
All
just
right.
said a match. So
Okay.
you've got there's a lot of depth and breadth on what a match is.
And we have some time to flesh that.
Yes,
out,
ma'am.
That
Okay.
particular
And
item.
it doesn't
Right.
have to be, it doesn't have to be the full 7 million. It can be, whatever the match comes up, then between now and the time you set the bond, you could set it at 3 million, as John had said earlier. It doesn't have to be that. It's just that the committee was concerned that it be a half, that we do our half if we can get some more. We didn't want to pass up free money.
Have they applied for this? For the matching funds? Has there an application in, or are we waiting?
I don't know that there's an application in, but there are grants out there for that possibility.
But I
But we
mean-
don't tell the staff.
Okay. But I mean, how long does it take? You've only got until August.
I totally agree, council member. And I also know that there are private funds that are being sought. Now, the private funds at 7,300,000, probably not gonna happen, but there might be 100,000 maybe. And if that were the case, or, you know, that would be, but that's the reason we did it the way we did, because we didn't wanna spend 7.3 million without, having some match money. But there may be a,
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
The reason I'm interested in that airport is because I know there are some problems out there that need to be addressed.
Yes.
And with University of Texas, or SFA being a part of the University of Texas system, there is a tremendous aviation program that has come on the last couple of years that is just absolutely taken off. And I think you're gonna have a lot more traffic out there than you've ever had. And, you know, we might could call UT and tell them to go knock on TxDOT's door and say, look, this is what we need.
Not a bad idea.
So,
But weren't we told that it was a possibility about the matching fund was already in the works?
no.
So I can tell you that we have, since I've been on council, we have given money for match. And when it comes, I think they watch it pretty carefully. So this is something I think that we'll have to dig in more deeply. We don't have the answers
But we
tonight.
didn't see any grant applications
Right.
or, you know, tentative agreements between anyone. It was just, if there's a match, put it on the bond. If there's not a match, put it on the bond or don't put it on the bond. It's up to y'all, but our recommendation was put it on the bond if you have a match.
Okay, let me ask you this. Are you through?
I was just going to add on to that. In the discussions that I've had, Mr. Bartlett, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't it the case that typically to go and seek those matching funds, you have to have funds already set aside to have them? So that would be knowing that we don't have a ton of capital that we can spend, we can't apply for those grants without already having the funding allocated, correct? I'll let you address that.
Steve's coming.
He thought he was going to get to sit down the
Oh,
whole time.
Mayor and Council, Steve Bartlett again. So there's kind of two avenues here. When you do, say, a new terminal building in an airport, their TxDOT Aviation through the FAA funds may come up with a 90-10 terminal program this particular year, which means we've just got 10% leveraged to get that. So it's fantastic. So that would be match. Quite a bit. In fact, all your routine area maintenance is a 50-50 match every year. So I think the point of the committee was, we'll designate 7.3 million, but we want you to seek opportunities to grow that to 10 or 12 million through matching funds. There are some private entities who have talked to us that may have funds as well. So The applications come the other way around. We've done a new terminal area plan, which is kind of a master plan for the airport. It's currently in TxDOT's lap. You have to have that as a foundation to even go and ask for these projects. So we now have a new plan of new terminal, new apron, everything you see. In fact, the whole first phase in that terminal area plan is about 7.5 million. So technically, we could build it all with that amount. But the point of the committee was, we think you ought to do more, and we think you ought to seek some matching funds to encourage us to leverage our money to do more at the airport. Whether it was 20% leverage or 90% leverage, I think that was the intention.
Why is it all or nothing right now, though? Because it seems like the airport deserves more money, but if you said that if it didn't get matching funds, it's not gonna be on the bond. So wouldn't it make, I'm not trying to get in the weeds here, but wouldn't it make more sense to say $2 million for airports improvement absolutely on the bond, other than saying 7.3 and we probably won't get it?
It could have, but on June 27th, when we were discussing this and voting on it, this is how it came out.
Okay.
But again, I can't say this enough. These are recommendations from a committee to
So
the
it's
city council.
our fault.
and no, it's not your fault. No, that's not what I'm saying, Brad. It's, if as a group, y'all go, you know what, let's just put 3 million on there. There's
We're
nothing
not
wrong
deciding
with
that tonight.
No,
correct?
no.
No,
That's
you're
the
not.
point.
The
We're
only-
not deciding
but-
that, and we'll get more information.
But again,
as we go along.
all of this that's on here, the languages, once you go see bond counsel, the language is gonna change, the specificity is going to change. Some of the things, based on what Pam just said, the dollar, they may go, you can't do that one, you're gonna have to take that one off. So this is just our recommendations
Okay.
based on studying this stuff since January.
Okay, so do you need a motion and a second to proceed with this?
Just-
We,
no.
Or what?
we
Oh,
don't
no,
need,
okay.
we don't need anything.
Okay, well, then go back to your calendar now, then, because, okay, tonight was city council decision to move forward, okay?
Yes, sir, if one of you, we're not asking for a motion, a
Okay.
second.
And
or
then
a vote.
July the 13th, engage bond attorney and financial advisor.
Yes.
So,
That's 2 days from now.
Yeah.
So really, you want to know if we want to keep moving forward.
Well,
is
you're
basically
gonna have to
consensus.
engage bond
Yes.
counsel and an attorney to decide what you're gonna do between August the 9th and the 21st.
What I hear is, it sounds like we want to move forward, correct?
So,
go ahead, go
I
ahead.
just have one more slight, it's not a question, but just to get it straight for me. Okay, there's a bond for 40-something million dollars. But in addition to that, there's also gonna be another bond to pay for all the taxes. The taxes are gonna go up. I don't know what the lady's name is. She just left, but she was concerned about people taxing her and property taxes and all that. So not only will we be taxed for the bond that you want right now, but won't we also be taxed by utilities and water all going up in order to revenue bonds to pay for this? So there's another bond in here, is that true? Am I
Well,
misunderstanding?
Well, I don't know what's next. Like I said, there may be a utility rate bond. There may be just an increase in utility rates.
But either way, taxes are going up, not only
Well,
just for property and stuff, but.
Yes, sir, but, so one is a usage. You know, if you use a lot of water, you're gonna pay a lot more for the water use. So it's different than property tax, but
Right.
similar in the vein, it's like it's all coming out of the same pocket, as you like to say.
Still same wallet.
Except some people's wallets is not coming out of this. The lady that spoke, her property taxes are frozen at this rate.
But her
So-
utility taxes are not.
Yes, sir, but we haven't addressed that yet, so I can't even tell you what that would be.
Okay.
And
those
as I mentioned, it may be, the city's gonna do, a low interest, partial debt forgiveness loan. Keep the utility rate where it is, and nobody's gonna see an increase in anything. But that work hasn't been done yet. So it would be premature for me to tell you, yep, it's gonna go up, or no, it's not gonna go up. It's probably not gonna go down, because the cost of making clean water, whether it's out of the lake or out of the sewer, is gone up. And it's an unfortunate fact of life, but, the value meal at McDonald's isn't much of a value anymore
Right.
either. So, I would tell you that, if the council decides to make this, in some way, shape, or form committee, a standing committee, and you and Mayor Johnson get the opportunity to appoint members. 68% of the committee right now is made up of Councilwoman Ballinger, Councilman Bolden, and Councilman Huckabee picks. So you and Randy have to find somebody to be on the committee. But once that committee reconvenes, we recommend that you have them study the utilities.
John, basically, and their committee's done a great job. Y'all have done your job, right? Okay, now it's time for us to do ours. So,
Yes.
there's where we are. Now, do we want to tell whoever to move forward? Okay.
Whatever that takes.
Mayor, I do have a few comments that I'd like to make,
Okay.
if that's okay
All
with
right.
everybody. And maybe really just to my council members, my colleagues, I've been listening to our discussion tonight and trying to unpack the discussions and deliberations for capital needs for over a year of being on council and listening to the great work of the 20 members. I promised when I ran for city council that I would stop kicking the can down the road on infrastructure needs, that I would be fiscally responsible with our tax dollars and absolutely transparent in my dealings. And I also promised in December, when we appointed the Capital Needs Advisory Committee, that I would support their recommendation after input and study from the committee and city staff. So let me be clear. I intend to fully support the bond proposal as recommended today before the council when we formally decide on that, and I intend to vote in favor of each proposition, however they're written, at the ballot box in November. Beyond that, there are a few points that I want to support what I'm saying and a couple of things that I want to dispel. The primary reason that I feel this way, and I strongly support us moving forward with this bond proposal, is the work that this committee has done and the staff who has spent hundreds of hours since January studying all of these capital needs and what the many potential funding options are. I look at you, John, because you have you've done the due diligence on so many of those things, and calling ISO, which that just blows me away. So thank you for what you've done
It's a
there.
toll-free number.
If
But
it
not a
cost, you would have
time-frame.
spent less time. We had a committee that was composed of members of the public throughout the city with various backgrounds and experiences, and even a council member on there as well, who came together, and every single one of them supported this recommendation. Since my election, I've supported the idea of bringing ad valorem taxes, as others have spoken about tonight. Ad valorem supported bond indebtedness to the voters. That is our responsibility, is to give them a voice in this process. I continue to share that philosophy and believe that we as a council and that committee have done our due diligence and provided opportunities for public input over the last 6 months. And there will be more opportunities for us and our staff to educate the public on what it means for each taxpayer from a tax standpoint to support the new debt that's being proposed. On the other hand, there are a few positions that I want to mention that I do not agree with. The first is the notion that this CNAC committee is not representative of the current council or of the city. 15 of the 21 members, which is 70% or so, originally were appointed by members of the current council. Those in attendance for their votes on the 27th of June consisted of 11 of the 14 that were there, appointed by members of this council, all of which voted in favor of the proposal. Another notion that I want to address is that we're only considering the 7 items here when there are other items that are equally important or even more vital in the utility fund. For the bond election, we're only considering needs that would be funded from our general fund for general bond indebtedness and supported by ad valorem taxes, not from utility rates. Other pressing needs in wastewater collection, treatment, water production, and distribution would be handled later using other debt instruments, as the co-chairs have mentioned. There's not enough data for doing that right now, as they have shared and as staff have shared previously, which will need to be addressed by the Capital Needs Committee should we make that a standing committee, which I believe we should. Overall, I believe that this council has been transparent and listened to the needs and concerns of our residents, and that we will continue to do so as we move toward our bond election. And we will have built trust and must continue to be responsible with our public funds and do exactly what we say we're going to do with those funds. So those are just some of my thoughts on those, but I absolutely support moving forward with this recommendation as presented.
Thank you.
I think everybody said that. Yep, okay. All right, okay.
One
Thank
last
you very
thought. Thank y'all.
Yes, ma'am.
And I think that the people that served on the committee that you all put there are very grateful to you for what you do, because we just had that one charge. Y'all have that and so much more. But this is one time when it's not us coming and telling you, this is what you need to do. We are making a recommendation, but at the end of the day, we're gonna help you pass the bond. If that's what you decide, you've got a strong group behind you saying, we believe, and we trust you with the judgment. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Pam, on July 13th, will you engage the bond attorney?
I will do that at 8 o'clock in the morning if I need
And
to.
financial advisor, okay.
Yeah, they both are waiting our call.
Okay.
They are, so.
All right, everybody through. We're gonna go to,
Recess, please.
okay. Okay, let's take a break. Okay, we're gonna take a break, 5-minute break. Next item on the agenda is consider the appointment of up to 3 members to the Nacogdoches Economic Development Corporation Board of Directors. Customarily, it would be the city manager, which it would be, right now it would be Keith Kiplinger, and myself, and then I'd like to nominate Kathleen Ballinger to be on that committee also. And I'll make that in form of a motion if we need to.
I'll second.
Is he? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Same sign. Okay. All right. Item C, consider, just a minute, let me get on my paperwork here. Consider city board commission appointments to the Convention and Visitors Bureau, Historic Landmark Preservation Committee, Mayor's Committee on People with Disabilities, Nacogdoches Housing Authority, Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, Planning and Zoning Commission, and Zoning Board of Adjustments. We spent 3 half-days last week, wasn't it? Okay, to come up with these committees. And the first one, I'd like to make a motion to appoint the following to the Convention and Visitors Bureau for a 3-year term. John McLaren and Taylor Bradford.
Second.
I have a motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Also like to make a motion to appoint to the Historic Landmark Preservation Committee Joanne Schaffner to fill an unexpired term which will end in 2025, and Jeff Apt and Charles Bradbury to fill a full 3-year term. Call for a second.
Second.
Have a motion, a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. I'd like to make a motion to appoint the following to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board for a 3-year term. Tracy Lassiter, Sue McLaughlin, Michael Montez, Mark Sal, and Don Stover. Have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. I'd like to make a motion to appoint the following to the Planning and Zoning Commission for a 2-year term. Ruth Carroll, Shannon Conklin, and Lily Fu.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. I'd like to make a motion to appoint the following to the Zoning Board of Adjustments for a 2-year term. Regular members Larry King and David Schaffner, and alternate member John Sloan.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. I'd like to make a motion that the board and committee handbook be changed to state that the Nacogdoches Housing Authority Board will have 7 members with the following appointments: John Mosley to fill a 1-year term, Nicole Upshaw, Patricia Crane, and Barry Bell to fill 2-year terms.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Also like to make a motion that the board and committee handbook will be changed and state that the Mayor's Committee on Peoples with Disabilities will have between 11 and 13 members with the following appointments, all for 2-year terms: Elizabeth Gaudette, Jacob Grayson, Latricia Jacobs, Donald Lacey, Nancy Niehaus, Todd Pendershagen, Christina Ward, and Clifton Watts.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay. Okay, next item.
Can we just clarify that there will be more appointments made but some of them will have
Go
to.
ahead.
We were all so impressed with the volunteers who came and asked to be on different boards, that there are more appointments to be made, but they can't be made until we change a couple of ordinances. So they'll be made very, very quickly. So we appreciated very much all of you who volunteered to give your time to our committees and boards.
And as soon as we have those ordinances done, we'll do the same thing again, adding more members to some of these committees, so.
And one comment I would make, just to echo what the mayor said in almost every interview that we did, that appointing boards and commissions is perhaps the most important thing that this council will do during our terms, because the boards and commissions do the work of the city and help our staff and the council get things done.
Any other questions? Okay. All right, next item, hold a discussion and give staff direction regarding murals. Councilmember Mall.
Do we want to talk about it first or have open discussion? What?
Okay. Well, you want to present the item?
Yeah, I'll just tell you the story. I accidentally stumbled upon, try to go to a lot of the different committee meetings here. And I went to one where murals was on the Park and Recreation's agenda. And I went there for the meeting, and the meeting didn't have a quorum and was canceled. But I stumbled upon or ran into a member of that board who had been called and said, well, there is a meeting about murals, but it's at a different location. So I went there and just sat there and listened. And the things in the meeting, number one, I guess it wasn't a public meeting, I don't know. And I'm not here to oppose murals, I'm here to find out about them. And I'm glad so many people came interested in it. So I know I got a lot of mail today where people were like, why are you opposing this? And this is such a good thing. I'm not opposing it. I'm looking for clarification. And you're the people that can give me some clarity here. But the things that were mentioned in the meeting that caught my attention, which I accidentally was there, was that the committee was unknown. It had not been appointed like these boards that were appointed tonight. It wasn't, to my knowledge, appointed. It was a subcommittee of a committee that was appointed by that committee, which may be fine, but it did seem to be odd. And also, there was talk in that meeting of putting many murals all over town, and there was a question of how much would these murals cost? And people said, the person in charge of the meeting said, well, around $50,000 per mural. They also said that the city itself had already moved over $20,000 from their budget to pay for these murals, which I didn't know anything about. I'm new on the board, I understand that. But they were also seeking permission from, say, like the Cole Art Center to put the mural up there. And then they're seeking permission from private building owners downtown to paint a mural or many murals. And I was just wondering, who's making these decisions for the whole downtown? And then when you're moving downtown's borders from the main street of Nacogdoches to all these different areas in the master plan, does that mean that's all downtown now too for murals? Does it go all the way to King Street? Does it go to Shawnee? Does it go way south? Does it go to Orton Hill? These are things that I feel like we should at least be a part of and at least know about it. And one question that really struck me was that one of the people on this board that I didn't know asked, how much can we spend before the city gets involved? Even though it was stated that the city had already committed $20,000 to this program to get it off the ground. And that seems contradictory to me. It seems like a different committee that's running a different city that we're not a part of. And wouldn't that $20,000 they've already committed be from your tax dollars that we didn't know about? So that's what I'm wanting to know. And also, are the murals in the new downtown master plan? That was my question, because that master plan has not been vetted yet, nor has it been approved. It's only a draft. So why would you start doing something in a master plan if it hasn't been approved or vetted yet? And that's enough. I think we can open public discussion with that, and I'm completely open to you answering every question and saying, well, Brad, you just don't know, and let me explain it to you. So please come up and explain it to me.
Mr. Bray.
Brian Bray, your Community Services Director, and Councilman Mall, I apologize if I didn't go to all of them. I was trying to frantically scratch while I was on my knee to be able to answer your questions.
You want to hear them again?
Let me see if I can get them, and then you can tell me what I missed. So you're right, it was not a public meeting. It was not posted. The Main Street Board is appointed by this body, and then the way the Main Street program works is there are subcommittees that work on things that the board wants them to work on. So the Main Street Board appointed a subcommittee to investigate murals. Most of the things you mentioned, you need a little more information on. So the funds haven't been committed. The board said we will spend up to $20,000 for murals. Those funds are not tax dollar funds. Those funds are actually through the Main Street Sundry account, which are funds that the Main Street Board raises through Wine Swirl. So there's kind of a couple answers there wrapped up into one. The subcommittee, okay, answered that one. The cost, city funds, the murals can be up to $50,000. And so that was the answer that was given by our Main Street manager, Tori Huddleston, was, if I came to Mayor Johnson and said, hey, I want to paint a mural on the side of your building, and it's only going to be $10,000, but then I give them a bill for $50,000, so that's why she gave the high end. They could be free. They could be $10,000. I mean, so that's the range. Master plan, I don't know if they're in the master plan, but this did not come from the master plan. They're two completely separate things altogether. So hopefully I answered all of those individual points you just tried to make. But the way this program works is the same way we do lots of other programs. So I think before you were on the board, Jessica Sal came to you and talked about beautification grants. That started with Main Street, who appointed a subcommittee. Staff developed a program and then vetted it back through Main Street and then came back to council and said, here is an ironed out plan, as opposed to little bits and pieces of the plan. So then once city council approved those beautification grant program, then Main Street went and enacted that plan. So that's the same process that the staff was planning on doing with these murals, is they have to find out if there's interest. They found out there was interest. They started a subcommittee. Subcommittee then had to say, does any building owner even want a mural on the side of their building? Because if the answer is no, well, then what are we doing? So they did approach a few, not to say, here's the mural I want to paint, but can we paint a mural? And here are the various topics that we're interested in covering, but we don't even have a rendering yet. We don't even have an artist yet. We haven't even sent out a call for artists yet. So those are all steps that are way down the road. This program for the murals through the Main Street program is not happening tomorrow. This is months down the road whenever funds become available. But we have to get the plan in place before we can even come to council to say, here's the plan.
You know, go ahead.
So I have for many years been interested because I can't remember, one year I saw a mural that went up and then a lot of people didn't like it and we painted over it. And I can't remember, it's been like maybe 10, 15 years ago. I think it was one by CVS. I can't remember. I'm not really good at all that. But anyway, so I called a few cities after I knew this was going to be on the agenda to find out what other cities do. And most cities, let me just say, I called, I don't know, 3 or 4 cities and some council people I knew on other places. And said they have a policy and they have an oversight process who votes on them. And they actually have limited topics that they consider. Some of them even had certain colors. And some of them had rules and regulations that it had to pertain to Nacogdoches, or to whatever city it was. And then they had an approval process. I don't know if we have all those things, but I think those are all valuable.
That is the very thing that this group is trying to develop to then bring to you for adoption.
Okay.
So in their discussions, they've talked about multiple reviews. First, it has to go through Main Street, because it's a Main Street program. It has to go through Main Street. If it's a building under historic overlay, it has to go through HLPC. Even though painting a previously painted building does not require a COA, I know Councilman Mull knows that, he sat on there. If Mayor Johnson wanted to paint his building pink tomorrow on the South Street side, he can. So, but we've still asked them to go through HLPC.
I'm going to.
Please don't. But it has to go through HLPC, and then it comes to council.
So my recommendation is that, maybe I shouldn't, I'm just speaking really quickly because it's a long meeting. So maybe when this whole process is developed, also maybe some kind of unified themes or some that they're part of in other cities, what kinds of things. And then even before anything goes out for bid, we can see the process and the approval process.
Yes, ma'am, and
I see you're just shaking your head over
yes,
there,
ma'am,
so
that's exactly
good.
what I just said.
Okay.
That's exactly what I just said, was that's the plan, is we're developing a plan to then present to council. Because then if council, just like with, the bond group, if council had said, we don't want to do any of this, well, then it stops. But we have to do the research to then present a plan, and then you say yes or no.
Thank you for doing the research, instead of me.
The mural that I have on my wall facing the courthouse, whether you like it or not, I'll tell you the story on that. I tried to find somebody for 15 years because that was just a blank, ugly wall. And this kid came by one day, and he was in my son's class. His name was Tyson Davis. And he said, Mr. Johnson, he said, I'll paint your wall. And I said, well, show me what you're going to do. He had this deal, and I'm not an artist. I said, Tyson, you like that? And he said, yeah, it shows the history of Nacogdoches. I said, that's a dangerous job. He said, I can do it. He did it. And, you can do it again if you want to. I don't care. Tyson can do it again, or whoever. Whatever we want to do. But I do like the idea that we go through, like what y'all are doing now, where the gentleman in the back there, he came to see me. I forgot it. You. Yeah. You and 2 other ladies came to see me. And, yeah.
Robert
and,
McCandless.
Pardon me?
It's Mr. McCandless.
Mr. McCandless, okay. I forgot his name. So I like the way you're doing this, as long as there's checks and balances on exactly what we do. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm good.
my concern is that once the painting is going up on, there's no input on it except for the people that decided it. Well, it's for all of Nacogdoches, and you could get into the weeds. Once paint goes up on a mural, then you're gonna have either people protesting and wanting to paint over it, or people.
Do you want me to explain it? When comment?
I think we have Mr. Bray can explain I hope. Mr.
I'm on the Main Street board, I can tell you how the plan.
So
I'm
we-
completely open to that.
So I've given you the basic framework because there is nothing set yet. The Main Street Board hasn't adopted what the whole plan is going to be. I mean, the subcommittee has 9+ topics, but they're broad topics. You know, if I said, give me a drawing of Caddo history, each one of the 5 of you is going to give me something different.
Right.
So this is in the global 60,000 foot phase. We haven't gotten to what the image looks like yet. So, and that would be way after council says yes or no to approval.
I'm asking for, not the image to yes or no approve. I'm asking for you to bring back the policy.
Yes, ma'am, and I've said that's 100%. You and I are on the same page, yes.
Okay, that's really what
You got time?
I think it's.
I'm sorry?
Do you have time?
Yes.
Okay, good.
So, I mean, if we have a policy and, that describes the oversight and the approval process, and, I don't know how you even write this in, but I was fascinated by one city that even talked about colors and keeping a certain color scheme or something, and I'm sure you're nodding because you're investigating that. So, well, one of you's nodding no and one yes, but.
I'm just thinking,
Oh.
yes, I know.
Okay,
And-
I'm not an artist, and I don't know anything.
My brain's thinking lots of things.
Oh, okay. So anyway, if you would bring that policy back before any.
Absolutely.
funds
Have we
or
done
something.
public input? Because I
No,
think
we
there's
haven't.
people
No,
that want
because
to
we
speak.
because we haven't gotten there yet. But,
Okay.
I mean, that's all gonna, we, we have to
Yeah,
develop
I'm
a.
talking about right now. I mean, there's people itching to speak.
Oh, I thought you were talking to me, I'm sorry,
No.
I'm sorry.
And
I
I
didn't
want
realize you were
them
talking
to,
to you,
I
Mayor. I
want them to
apologize.
speak.
I do have just a couple of questions for you, Mr. Bray. I know that Main Street raises funds with Wine Swirl. Who appropriates those funds? Does Main Street, or we have that authority, right?
Yes, so not every dollar in the Main Street Sundry account has a line item. So if there are things outside of those line items, it has to come before council for expenditure. So I'm not the Main Street manager, so I don't have the numbers listed specifically, but I did jot down. So there are categories such as the beautification grants. There's a number assigned to that. Downtown lights, there's a number. Wine Swirl, there's a number. Downtown miscellaneous events, there's a number. If there's something other than what is lined out in the budget, it has to come before council for approval.
But those budget items are also approved by council, right?
Yes, sir, they have, yes, sir, I was just saying,
Ultimately-
anything outside of those couple. So this mural would be an example. That's not already in the line item budget. They would have to come before council for approval.
Before a penny was spent.
Correct.
Why were murals on Parks and Recreation's agenda that day?
It was a basketball court mural.
So that's a different policy?
So we have already painted in the last 3 years, 2 murals, one on Festival Park and one at McCrimmon Park. And those have been run through the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, and it is a line item in the parks budget. So previous councils have approved that item is my point.
That's my question. I think my concern was just because I wanted to be clued in on what's going on, that's all. And how it works.
Public comment? Public comment?
Is that all?
That's it, Brian. Okay, now we can do public comment. Anybody want to speak? Ronnie, you want to come up here? Ronnie, come on. Come on, Ronnie.
Hi, I'm not a big public speaker, so just bear with me. I wrote some notes. My name is Bridget Kozash. I live here in Nacogdoches. I've lived here for almost 10 years. I went to school at SFA, and I graduated in 2017 with a degree in history. I am a full-time artist here in Nacogdoches. I'm a stained glass artist, and I manage and work at the Firehouse NAC building, which is a private studio and event space. We started Firehouse NAC in 2021 with 4 members. It was myself, my friend Brittany Holden, my friend Britt Mitchell, and my friend Dylan Graham. So we started this with the intention of being a horizontal structure, which means everyone's equal. Everyone's vote, if you're a paying member, is equal. There's no one that gets 1 or 2 votes. Just because I manage the collective, which means I just take people's rent money sometimes and find new renters and communicate with the property manager, does not mean I have any more say than anyone else at the collective. So I bring up the horizontal structure because I think it's essential to bring that up. I view everyone in my life that way. I think everyone's equal despite title, despite appointment or anything like that. So just a quick background on the art community in Nacogdoches as I've lived it, which has only been about 7 of the 9 years I was in school, so I wasn't jumping right in the community yet. We are a very resilient folk. We work really hard to create a beautiful space here in Nacogdoches for arts to thrive, not only visually, so like murals and stuff like that, but also we try to do it in a way that is sustainable for anyone that wants to try to do art part-time or as a hobby or full-time like myself. When I say resilient, what I mean is that there have been several times over the last several years that we have been underpaid or unpaid when hosting art events in this town. So a lot of art events that happen here are events that are organized for free by the people that host them. All of Firehouse NAC's events, we do a lot of shows. Every year we do a show called NAC Noise. This is our 3rd year that we just did. It coincides with the Blueberry Festival. All of that work goes unpaid. And we do that because we love our community. Like, we love being here. And I mean, I can only speak for myself, but everyone here is different. But I do it because I love seeing people smile and be happy and dance to music and make friends. And kids are invited to these things too. So like, we really just want to harbor a good community. So I could go into specifics about why we have been undervalued in this town if you would like, but I don't want to really do that because it sounds really negative. But if you have any questions after I'm done talking, I can do that. The reason I'm up here about this line item, to trust an artist or create any kind of art, but in this situation, muralists typically are painting or wheat pasting or something like that. So it's very important to trust the artists in their process. A lot of artists are historically educated. I mean, I have a history major. I was a history major myself, and a lot of the people in my collective that I work in are very familiar with Nacogdoches history. So I guess what I want to say is when you're considering giving muralists these ideas of maybe like a policy or requiring them to fulfill some sort of, they have to be certain colors or it has to be a certain type of history. I really want you to remember that history isn't always pretty, and it's important to remember that that's okay. It's really fine to be uncomfortable. It's honestly important for us to be uncomfortable, and sometimes people will submit, if you guys put, let's go back to the Caddo Indian idea of like, typically how murals have gone in the past, from what I've seen, is they'll put a call out for an artist, and in that call, it'll ask for how much you want to spend on it, how long is it going to take you to paint it, can you give me it's got usually an upload form or some sort of description about what the mural is going to look like. So I encourage you to do the least prohibiting of an artist as possible, and let them express themselves. And oftentimes these muralists represent entire communities here. So just let them express themselves and their communities with an open mind, and let them share that with you without thinking that we can't display the history in our town that may not be favorable for every demographic or certain demographics. Yeah, so I think that's really it. I do want to say something in response to something I heard earlier. I just wonder if in that beautification line item, if murals are included in that, because I do believe that murals beautify a city. And then I also, I talked to Chad Huckabee earlier today about maybe reading another piece from a friend of mine that was here earlier, but that cannot read right now because he's doing an music/trivia event downtown, and I was wondering if I'd be okay about reading that. That's kind of a question. Those are my two questions. Just the clarification on beautifying the town, and if that includes murals in that budget line item, and then also if I could go ahead and read Jay Soul's.
Mayor, if there's no objection, I'd like to hear the other comment. He was here, he just had to leave.
Sure.
Okay, I'm totally reading this for the first time, so just like bear with me. This is in the words of Jeffrey Murray, which he also is Jay Soul. He hosts trivia at the brewery, at Macklemore's, at Cowboy Jack's. And he also works for the city. So yeah, here we go. City Council, Mayor Johnson, City Manager Kiplinger, city staff, and my fellow Nacogdochians. I apologize for my absence, as I had hoped to speak on this agenda item, but unfortunately trivia at Cowboy Jack's won't host itself. I am, however, very fortunate to have my dear friend Bridget read this statement on my behalf. As a native Nacogdochian, I take great pride in my town and its deep and rich history. It's one of the many reasons I came back here to live in 2021. But with as much pride as I have for my town, I often feel that my town does not take pride in the diverse history of its beginnings. The representation of Black and brown people in our city's museums, on our city's murals, and statues is poor at best. I'm not sure what exactly is taught in our area's schools about East Texas history, but if my schooling is any indication of the curriculum, then I know it does not include much outside of Rosa Parks or Martin Luther King Jr. And if children aren't learning about all of American history, which includes Black history, they certainly don't have as much to see around town to seek that knowledge on their own. I also find it rather disappointing that in 2021, President Biden signed the Juneteenth National Independence Day Act into law, making Juneteenth a federal holiday in this country. Many cities in the state of Texas and around the country have gone on to observe the holiday since then, except Nacogdoches. In fact, in December 2022, then city manager Mario, I need pronunciation on his last name, Canizares, along with city council, approved 2 new holidays for city employees for the 2023 calendar year: Veterans Day and a random, quote, floating holiday, unquote, to be taken throughout the yet another missed opportunity to take advantage of paying homage to the end of slavery in our community. As a city employee and a Black American, it was a slap in the face knowing that the floating holiday could easily have been used to observe a historic day that has already been federally recognized and celebrated for 2 years in a row. I do hope that this item can be revisited in the future by council, and I will ensure that I am present to give my comments on the matter if it lands on a future agenda. In closing, I hope that any type of murals or memorials done represent all of our town's history, not just the parts of history that people are comfortable with talking about. Like I've always been taught, if you don't learn from the mistakes of your past, you are bound to repeat them. I appreciate your time tonight, as well as Bridget's eloquent delivery, and I thank you all, Jaisal. I also want to go ahead and, I missed doing this, but I'd like to ask my fellow Firehouse folk to stand up real quick. This is just 4 of our, oh yeah, clap for them, yes, absolutely. These are just 4 of our members. We have 9 total artists and 1 band of 4 to 5 members. They kind of come in and out. So it's very important. The art community here is very tight-knit. We all care about each other. That's why I bring that up. But anyway, my question back to the beautification line item is still relevant as well. But anyway, I'm here if you have any questions.
Yeah, Thank you. I received a couple of emails today that in support of arts. And my question is, in general, do you think, besides the Art Co-Center and SFA involvement in that, is the city supportive of arts in general?
I think that, I don't want to say no, but I do think that our city has a lot of work to do to support artists. We do a lot of work for free. We don't receive very many grants, other than the murals that we have received. Tyson Davis has received some grants in the past, which is excellent, and I love that. And I do love the occasional call for an artist for a mural. That is important. But for the downtown festivals that we host, like Art Fest, and other events that Firehouse NAC even puts on, and the Nacogdoches Arts Collaborative, who the director is here tonight, CC Khan, we don't very much receive that much money from the city, but the city benefits off of our beautification and off of the work that we do for free. Many of us work a lot. Some of us work 3 jobs, and I say some as in like a large group. Among a large group, there are several of us that work a lot, and we still do this because we care about our town's art community. So I don't know if that answered your question, but.
And I'm going to quote one of the statements that one of them made. In their opinion, the city council is there to prevent murals of actual Nacogdoches history in the black community. Would you say that statement is somewhat true or accurate?
I guess I would go back to what Jaisal said in his letter, and it's that there's very little Black history represented in this town. I mean, there's history here that's not even, it's like a romanticized version of what the South is, rather than accurate and relevant Black and brown history. So that's kind of how I'll answer that question. I'm a white woman too, so like, you know, I only can give the perspective that I can give as a white woman.
And see, one of the issues that I have is, now, I was born in Nacogdoches. I know quite a bit of history, but I'm also, my parents was born and raised in Nacogdoches, my grandparents. And so I know immediate history that they gave to us. And it's not what we read in books nowadays, the actual history that happens in Nacogdoches. And as far as Church Street, we get the version that we think it's easy for certain people to read. We don't get the actual history of what happened.
Right, I totally agree with that. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, I'll say, you know, Tyson did mine. He didn't get a grant. His grant was me. I paid him.
That's great. No, I love, and private donors are great
Yeah,
too,
and,
absolutely.
I gave Tyson all the latitude that he needed, you know, as far as the history of Nacogdoches. And he started it out, you know, in a meadow with deer, and it went to the Indian, and then it went to, maybe he didn't have enough room. But then it went to, you know, modern day Nacogdoches. So I didn't restrict him on anything that he did there. So that's just a comment.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. And I hope that I like that, you know, ideology that you have here, this continues. And I hope that when you guys do a call for muralists, and then when you guys do talk about your budgets and you know, hang out with each other, like, throw us a bone. Give us some money. And I'm just going to say that bluntly. We need it. We're doing it all for free or underpaid. And we really could use it. So, yeah, thank you.
Do you have any ideas of murals that you'd like to see here?
You know, I'm not a painter. I love painters. I have several friends that paint. You know, I guess just to...
Yeah, lean back just
Okay.
a little bit.
I don't know if I'm like kind of sounding like a broken record here, but again, I really think that the Black and brown history and accurate Indigenous history here could be represented in murals beautifully. And even in a way that is maybe uncomfortable, but at least the validity is seen. Like the people that look like the folks in that mural are like, finally, like, I'm represented and I have a plaque depicting my history accurately, maybe next to that mural. So, yeah. I don't really care what it looks like as far as color or style, you know? That's, every artist is different and I love it all.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Anybody
Bridget.
else? Helena?
Real quick.
Okay.
And I'd like to come in behind this young lady, and I'm very proud of what she said. Clarification for Mr. Mall. He did come in on a meeting that we were having, and he didn't know the relevance of that meeting. That meeting was to develop a listing of African Americans who were trailblazers here in Nacogdoches. If you're not a BIN, you don't know half of them, you don't know any of them. If you don't know some of the black leaders in Nacogdoches, you've missed a rich history. The doctors, the dentists, the beauty shops, the barber shops, the mom-and-pop stores on every other corner. Miss Huddleston has a list of 3 pages, maybe 4, that I've given her of black businesses from 1935 to at least 1965. So the mural that we're talking about is some of the educators whose schools have been named for them. The ones who started out in the 30s and the 40s in small buildings and then ended up in larger brick mortar buildings. The community here, since I've been researching more and more over the last year, is so doggone rich. There was a group of Indians that lived out Highway 7 that had an encampment. We didn't even know Hispanics. It was a group of, they had houses out there. Most of us didn't even know about them. They would walk downtown to get their groceries and all walk back. To indicate to the historical groups who are going all over town, except the black community, to show there is history in the black community. Not just in the Zion Hill district, not just coming off Main Street off Lanana, but on Shawnee, Orton Street, Martin Luther King, so many stores, so many beauty shops, so much history in those areas. We only wanted a tiny bit, which is all we're asking. That's all we ever ask for, usually. You know, she said, throw me a bone. We're asking for a little bone. Give us some space so that we can put our trailblazers, Mr. Arthur Weaver.
So you're talking about heroes.
Heroes, yes, sir.
I knew those people.
That's,
Back from the 60s on, I knew them.
Yes.
I drank soda water at Butler's store down on Orton. You remember?
Orton Street, yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Butler.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He and his wife.
Yeah.
And many of the entrepreneurs in that area, there's a few buildings that are still there. And we're trying to do a pictorial history, at least I am. Some of the other groups in our committee, Gary Roberts, Ms. Torrey. I don't see anybody else here. I'm sorry. She was at the first meeting. I've forgotten your names already, but yes, ma'am. She started it out with a city meeting upstairs. So it isn't that we're trying to take money from any place else or any other pocketbook within the city. We're hoping to get grant funds that will defray the costs of these and hopefully get maybe some local artists instead of going outside the confines of Nacogdoches. Pay some of these people if they can come in here and do it. We want them accurate though. We don't want we don't want fictional type looking people. We want the accurate. When I look up there, I see Professor Jones, I see Professor Campbell, I see Ms. Emmeline Carpenter, I see Mr. Arthur Weaver, I see Mr. Will Risper. Everybody in town knew Will Risper and his hot tamales.
Otis South.
Yes. Yes. So many unsung heroes. But I just want clarification, just piggybacking on what she's saying.
But
You know,
what you're doing though is that you're getting a bigger audience and more participation today by somebody asking you about it than it is by us ignoring it and not being a part of the process. We're not trying to hurt you. We're trying to welcome you and to see what's going on.
and I realized when you came into the meeting, you didn't know what we were doing. You just, because you were very quiet the whole time.
Well, it wasn't my meeting. I've learned to keep my mouth
And that
shut
was
sometimes.
Okay. And that was okay, but I wanted to clarify
Yeah.
that we were not trying to, take money from anybody else's pocket, but some of us have been meeting several times, trying to get this together, and I was tasked with making the list
Yeah.
of some of the notables, but that's going to be voted on. It's not, it isn't what I want. It's what the committee gets together and decides who's on the mural, the first mural that we do.
How do you feel about a mural that she called uncomfortable for people to look at? I mean, because.
We know the history.
Right.
It'll be uncomfortable for other people, other,
Will it be comfortable for,
Populations.
will it be comfortable for you?
as long as it isn't a hanging. And I'm
So-
being
so that
literal.
wouldn't-
I'm being
There
literal.
you go.
So that
And
wouldn't be
literal.
on your mural then, right?
We wouldn't want that because that's going to be uncomfortable for everybody and including children.
Right.
We don't want anything that's going to compromise what we now have in Nacogdoches. And to dredge up something that's uncomfortable like that, no. But, for instance, Mr. Will Whisperer and his hot tamales. If we put a mural up for him, it's got to have his horse and buggy with it.
That's positive. That's a draw to
That's what we
people to
need.
come here.
There are some things that may not be, but that's not a part of what our group is doing.
Right.
We're trying to put us together, not put us apart.
And that's a key, is bringing us together rather than
Yes.
dividing us, right?
Because our history is our history is all of Nacogdoches' history.
Yeah.
Everybody that was born and raised in Nacogdoches, we have the same history. It may be just on the other side of town, but we're here together.
Okay.
Half of my house is with Mr. Hayden Johnson's furniture. Well, over half my house is with his dad.
I think you need to be on a mural.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for your patience. I appreciate it.
Well, Lynn's here, and I guess Lynn could have spoke for this. I guess I was just, all of this stuff that came up, CC Khan, and I'm the executive director of Nacogdoches Arts Collaborative. We're working to have an art center in Nacogdoches. And thanks to Bridget, who spoke. I just wanted to, I'm on the council, I'm on the Main Street Board, and we're going through this, and we have all of these things in play. You know, that's the reason why we sent them out to find out. And there's been a lot of great things said today about she was saying the black and brown communities, and of course, we've been talking a lot about the black community. And I was, for many years, and just till very recently, served on the Friends of Caddo for about 10 years. And I just when this first came up, I always say, Caddo, we've got to respect the land for which we're on and that sort of thing. So it's very, very important to me also that we reached out, and I know Lynn's done some of that. So I just wanted to say that, other than, yes, we've got all these things in place and we don't intend it. As a matter of fact, there will be a call for artists, and when the artists are called in, we'll actually have a mock-up of what they're going to paint before it's painted. So no paint goes on walls until there's a mock-up. But I just want to say my words for the Caddo, because I love Tyson, I truly do, but I find that the Indian is a caricature. And I want appropriate representation of Caddo, if we can have appropriate representation, not a character. I know. I am not, this is not casting blame, and is not, like I said, I love Tyson, he's a great artist, but I would want, I know Lynn's reached out to some of the Caddo, and we want to, represent them, but also represent them appropriately. I think that's all I have, and I know Lynn was just getting ready to talk, and she can go over that a little more.
Well, you just stole most of my
thunder.
Okay, I'm Lynn Myers. I'm also on the Main Street Advisory Board. And I guess I have to say that I'm probably responsible for starting this whole mural thing. And we actually did get started well over a year ago, talking about the fact that it would be nice to do murals on a number of buildings here where we have blank walls, unattractive walls, or just, opportunities to have a message. And my theory behind all of this is that celebrates our history, and let's be sort of a common theme throughout the murals, celebrating the history of Nacogdoches, and also involving all the demographics that make up this city. So it would be the African Americans, it would be the Caddos, maybe some of the early Spanish people that were here. It doesn't have to be just dead white guys. Nothing wrong with that, but we've got lots of sculptures that already show that. So let's do something a little different. Some of the other things we're talking about for themes are just entertainment. It doesn't have to be based on a demographic, but, activities, things that make Nacogdoches what it is. So one mural might even be the garden center or garden capital of Texas. Another one might just simply be welcome to Nacogdoches, the oldest town in Texas. We want this to be relatable to tourists who come into town. Maybe they'll learn a little bit about Nacogdoches, and we want it to be a source of pride for the people who live here, all the people. So anyway, that's kind of where we're headed. We're still doing a lot of homework with all the different demographic of people, getting artists, getting input from all kinds of people. So, you know, don't worry, we're not about to leap into doing a mural that's not appropriate. I'm hoping you trust our committee, that you will trust the Main Street Advisory Board to do something that is appropriate to celebrate Nacogdoches, and that we don't have to end up with a mural Nazi. That's it.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know what that meant.
I know it's getting late, but got, come up to say, and so he wanted to share through me. I'm his colleague on the Parks Advocacy League. Michelle Cox. So, and just incidentally, it's interesting to note that when he first tried to promote his art here in Nacogdoches to a certain group, they said his work would fit better in Lufkin, even though he was born and raised here, and that did feel like a big slap in the face, because they felt like his style or whatever his content would be wasn't good for Nacogdoches, which is heartbreaking to hear. And thankfully, we did have some to do some work and with the Parks and Rec department as well, which is really great. So, but what he wanted to share was, great evening, council members. I would like to start this message by telling a short story. I have been drawing and painting all my life, born and raised in Nacogdoches. Some of my closest friends are and were white, and their families would often have me over for dinner and road trips. I never considered their skin color, only the fact that they treated me like family, and my family treated them the same. This is the Nacogdoches I remember. While working in NAC, one day I was showing my sketchbook at the job, and a lady came to me and said, "Can you draw white people?" Deep down in my heart, I wanted to say, I can draw. It never crossed my mind if I was drawing white or black people, but I simply responded, "Yes, ma'am." She commissioned me to do a drawing of her late father and her little boy as a birthday gift to her mother. The day I presented this drawing is the day I realized that creating art is what I would do for the rest of my life. This lady cried tears of joy and hugged me something tough. She didn't care that a black man drew her father and son, only that the image reminded her of the moment captured in that photo. I may have been the only artist that she ever met. That question, can you draw white people, also sparked other thoughts. I began to realize that I had never drawn anyone who looked like me. All of the comic book characters and school projects rarely included a person of color. I believe that with a small bit of representation, I would be an even better artist today. We have an opportunity here to inspire and build young minds to achieve great things together. Our history lives in the red brick streets of downtown, even the clay dirt hills and pine trees. Yes, Nacogdoches has a tainted history where horrible things happened, but if we can't recognize our past, we are doomed to repeat it. Black people aren't looking for revenge, only opportunities to restore. Artists want to create beautiful things that all people can enjoy. Each mural should have representation of the space it lives in, guided by valuable and important community leaders. These murals will bring life and excitement to this town. Public art is a language that everyone can transcribe and read. With more of our history placed in public arenas, Nacogdoches will start to memorialize its heroes and culture. Thank you.
Drag it out a little further. My name's Robert McCandless. I'm a professional artist, have been for 50 years. I painted some murals. What I want to ask you is to not let Nacogdoches get messed up with a bunch of. If you've ever painted a mural, like drawing on paper, you transfer it to a larger wall. There's a lot of differences here. Nacogdoches is a historical town and should strive to celebrate that. Like what you said, all the history. If we want uncomfortable history, we're gonna have uncomfortable visitors. I think that we political. We have enough history in this town about what has been here, what has been built here, businesses y'all talked about, without getting political about anything. Historical murals depicting historical events can be used to tell our story to those who visit simply by putting one of those, what do you call them, a UPC code or
QR
something on
code.
for your phone. You can have those people talk. Each one of them say something, just like the storytellers over here. You can have a mural walk. My wife and I, we travel a lot. I worked with the Philadelphia Mural Society, Wall Dogs, which is a national company that paints murals all over town. I've seen it done in Ruidoso, New Mexico, where they have a mural walk now, of 13, 14 murals, and people walk around with their phones all over town studying these murals and looking at them. I'm fully for a person being able to use their property for what they want to use it for. However, I think that we need to define what is downtown Nacogdoches, and we need to get everyone on the same page on these murals. Not to let someone slip in a whole bunch of balloons floating up, which has nothing to do with the history. We need those codes, and we need to tell our story through these murals. Professionally painted murals and the materials that are being used by muralists all over the country have changed over the years. When we went to paint electrical boxes, there was all kinds of debate as to what to paint them with. You don't debate what's to paint them. You study what needs to be used. You know the professional materials that professionals are using now, like the Philadelphia Mural Society, and you go with that. It may, 30 years down the road, may be the wrong thing to do, but by golly, it's the best technology we have today. And I believe we can do it without beating the city up. You said, funding and grants. There are grants available, but there's also, too, that, there's a lot of lumber has been moved in this city. And if you do a large mural with a train pulling lumber, a really nice mural, you might get some of the lumber companies around here to donate and put a strip below it. Don't write Johnson Furniture on it, but put a black line on the bottom of each mural along with that code so they can do it, telling all the donors. And if a person will donate the side of their building to be done, they don't have, if they want to give some money, that's fine. If not, put their name down as the building donor and then list your financial donors afterwards. Entice people to come in and be a part of it. I mean, it's been proven over and over that murals bring people to a city. They beautify a city. They make a place interesting. Let's do it with something good, some good history. I'm tired of my past. I want to move forward in my life, and I've got pretty colored past, but it's time to do something different and make a better world for us. We don't want to need to be dividing people with politics. Just, we've got enough of that already. Let's see. And we need a group to make sure. You want, to send out calls for murals, you want to see not only a scale drawing of what they're going to put up and the colors on it, but you want to know the materials that they're using, and you want to see pictures of the murals that they've done before. You don't want someone who's never painted a mural coming and saying, I want to paint this wall. It's a different animal. I guess that's about it for me. A good committee to make sure that everything is done right and everything fine. Questions?
Thank you, sir, very much.
Thank you. Okay.
I'll just be real quick. This Brandy Cartwright. The arts are an economic driver, which I know you're really interested in, what can economically drive our city. And as mentioned before, but I thought maybe some numbers might help. Arts are an export industry. $72 billion was the export value of the arts in 2011. And this came from some information that the University of Arkansas got together. I can send it to you if you want. Arts drive tourism. The U.S. Department of Commerce reports that the percentage of international travelers visiting museums on their trips in the U.S. has steadily increased since 2003. And of course, murals are part of that. Many museums have murals around. When you're traveling, you snap a picture with a mural, and then you put a hashtag of the city that you're in. It goes out there in many different ways. Arts strengthen the economy. The U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis reports that the arts and culture sector represents 3.25% of the GDP and generates $135 billion in economic activity annually. Arts are good for local merchants. Attendees at nonprofit art events spend money on meals, parking, babysitters, thus stimulating the economy. And that's just a very small fraction of all of the things that happen for the arts.
My name is Ethan Fothery. I'm going to try and keep this really concise. I'm a member of the Nacogdoches community. I was born in this town, and I've been an active member since about 2008 when I attended SFA for the first time. I would just like to speak a little bit to the historical topics that we've all been talking about, not to educate anyone here, because there are certainly people in this room who know far more than I do about this town's history. But I do think that while we all know Nacogdoches has a sordid history, I think it is absurd to think that anyone would recommend painting a lynching or anything like that on mural in town. I don't think that that's what anyone is proposing. I think that the discomfort that was mentioned earlier that it may cause is well-founded in the cultural fact that we have seen as fictional characters who have been historically white have been made black in media relations. There has been white backlash to those things. And so in the same way, when you paint black faces on things, there will certainly be people who are angry simply because of that fact. But I think that art has tremendous capacity to heal and to bring about reconciliation and therapy. And I think that representation in murals is incredibly important. The history of Nacogdoches for a really, really long time has focused on an event that happened before 1836 and a handful of people who led an unsuccessful rebellion because they were trying to steal. That is not to say that in this town, but that so much has happened since that time. So many people have done influential things, and so many black and brown people have done influential and incredible things in this town. And that as we move forward together as a city, I think it is invaluable that we recognize, honor, and celebrate those contributions. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think it's been excellent dialogue in what we've done tonight.
Mayor, if I may, just for a brief second.
Sure.
I want to say that I appreciate the entire dialogue. There have been so many different viewpoints that we've come together and discussed these big ideas that we all are very passionate about the history. So thank you, Councilmember Mall. But I want to highlight something for just a second because it's been mentioned a few times about the Nacogdoches Arts Collaborative. I'm going to plug y'all for just a second. My wife, son, and I did the art walk back in April, and we spent the afternoon, we just happened to see it on Facebook, and we said, you know what, this could be really cool. And we went to every single artist and spent some money. Like many have mentioned, it can be an economic driver, and we're certainly not wealthy by any means, but being able to give $20 or $30 or $40 to an artist that is trying to make a living in our town, it can be huge. And so I just want you to know that you have my support.
We'll take it, thank you.
Thank y'all very much. Okay, we'll go to the last item in the regular session, item E, receiver report and hold a discussion and give staff direction regarding 2023-2024 budget capital equipment.
Mayor, Council.
Director of Finance.
It's me again. So in your packets. I didn't say Margaret, so, you know.
She just got right on up here, didn't she?
So, in your packets, you got, this is probably, I'm not sure if y'all have gotten this level of detail in the past. This is every capital equipment item that was requested by the departments during their budget process and their meetings with Keith and I. And so tonight, what we're going to look at is kind of a summation of that. There is no decisions to be made. This is just kind of your first look on the capital equipment request that will be coming back to you with in your first draft of the budget on August the 1st. We're going to take it by our major funds first. General fund, the total requests are made up of well, I can't see with my glasses on, can't see with them off. 6 different departments that had capital equipment requests this year, and you'll notice they're in order of the amounts of the total. So in your packet, you got the actual individual items, whether it was a truck or a playground board or whatever. This is just going to be totals for the IT department, the street department, parks, recreation. What I want to accomplish here tonight is to let y'all see what the departments have requested and that they are in line with what we normally see. Because when you get a report that says there was $1.1 million worth of capital requests in the general fund, some of you have not been on council long enough to understand that that is a normal amount of request for us. And so what I wanted to do is to show you that the general fund request, a little over $1 million for each department, is going to actually be somewhat in line with what we normally see. I gave you the last 4 years of actual budgeted capital equipment for the general fund. Now, you'll see that the request this year is a little over $1 million. I said this is everything that's been requested. Keith and I have not sat down and had the departments prioritize these and things that have to happen this year and what can wait till next year. That's always a part of this process. And so what you will see in August in the first draft of the budget will not be more than likely this $1 million, because there are going to be items that when we sit down with these department directors and say, what do you have to have in 23-24? So these numbers will come down. I just want you to understand that this is not completely out of line with what we normally see for the general fund. Same thing holds true for our utility fund. The department requests there total about $500,000 this year. That is actually pretty much in the middle of where we see the history in the utility fund in the past. We had quite a bit of equipment that was budgeted in the current year, of $1.1 million. Like I said, request for next year will be $510. Will $510 be what's in the actual draft budget? More than likely not. Could be. That's just wanting to give you all an idea of what we actually are considering. The sanitation fund is going to be a little bit different this year, and I want to talk to y'all a little bit about that. Sanitation disposal, every year for the last, probably 7 or 8 years, council has committed to replacing 2 garbage trucks per year. And so we've been successful in funding that for at least, I think, the last at least 6 or 7 years. This year, we of course have asked for two trucks, but the 2024 versions of these trucks, we have been told, are going to go up in price significantly. How significant? It could be $100,000 and it could be $250,000. And so in order for us to be able to buy these 2 trucks for the $1 million that we are thinking, we may be coming to you for a budget amendment now to do that in the current year budget, just so that we can get a purchase order in place. Now, those trucks are not starting to be built until '24, and so we won't expend the money, but this may actually be pulled from the '23-24 budget, and we may bring that to y'all in the coming weeks in order to keep us from having to spend an additional $200,000+ on the same vehicles. So that's something that's not normal for us. Normally, when we're talking about the next year, that's where it is. But this may be something just to utilize that savings. We may come back to you sooner rather than later. Sanitation fund, you'll see here, the 1.2 is actually a little bit less than we have had funded for the last 3 years. Like I said, we do normally try to do two garbage trucks per year. Sometimes they're side loads, sometimes they're rear loads. I think this year it's 2 side loads that we're requesting. The equipment replacement fund, historically, we started this fund probably about 20 years ago. With the intent, this is all general fund departments. It was funded with an original of general fund reserves of $1 million. Council voted to move that $1 million out of general fund reserves and create a replacement fund. And the way it works is that original $1 million, we chose, let's say $500,000 worth of equipment that first year that we wanted to be, the departments requested. We paid for it out of the equipment replacement fund. And then the department, let's just say the police department, because they have one every year, the police department pays a, quote, car note for those police cars, and they reimburse the equipment replacement fund. So what it does is allows us to utilize the money that we set aside over all those years to actually pay up front for the car, but the operating budget of the police department only pays 12 months worth of notes. And so instead of us having to come to you and say, we need $400,000 out of general fund reserves every year, we only ask for you about $89,000 worth of car notes or whatever, if you want to call it that. And so we've been very successful with the equipment replacement fund over the years. We have about $3.5 million there now, made up of a lot of equipment that we have bought over time and replaced with the payments and I think it's like 6% interest. Another thing that is a benefit for the equipment replacement fund is when our firemen are on deployment, we are reimbursed for their overtime and their backfill and any travel cost, and that stays in the general fund because that offsets those additional expenses we have. But they also will reimburse us for the use of our equipment. So if we take our apparatus with us, they give us a set amount for the use of that vehicle. And council adopted several years ago for us to take that reimbursement and put it in the equipment replacement fund. And the intent there is to save money to buy a new fire truck because we are using our fire trucks on these deployments. And so this year we have been setting aside money for a fire truck, and they have requested to go ahead and utilize $550,000 of that for a wildland. You may have to help me here. Wildland Type 3, not sure what that is, but there is funding for that, and that about a third of that has been put there with those reimbursement funds. And so that is probably the biggest increase that you're going to see this year is for that fire truck. The police department, we allocate $400 every year for the replacement of their patrol units. The Parks Department, back up. The Parks Department, it's $350,000 this year, and the reason that is so high is because the Parks Department is one of our only departments in the city that has all of their vehicles on the replacement schedule. And over the last couple of years, they've paid off their car notes, and so that money's sitting there waiting for them to ask for a replacement. Well, if the truck is still good, we don't just replace it because it's paid off. So if it's still operational, we just let that money hold until they need a new one. Well, last year they needed several, and there was some miscommunication between me and the parks manager, and they didn't make it in last year's budget. So this year, it's all of their equipment. All of the money is sitting there, has been, it's ready to go. It's just we should have done half of them last year and half of them this year, and that was on, mostly on me, but, it was a little bit of a communication breakdown between the departments, but, so this year, it is a little bit elevated as to what you'll see that normally, we have the $400,000 every year for the police cars, and then normally it's a couple of mowers, maybe a tractor. But this year, like I said, we're gonna do the fire engine and the parks vehicle replacements. That 1.3, all of that money is sitting available, and so, unless there are issues that council has with replacing any of those things, we will be bringing that whole 1.3 to you as part of the draft budget as items that need to be funded. And that is pretty much the capital equipment as it stands today. Like I said, by the time you get your draft budget in August, some of these items may not be included, but I wanted you to have the detail that y'all could go through in case there are any items that you really feel strongly that you want to make sure are included in the budget, so that as we go through the process of eliminating some of these items, if you do have some things that you want to make sure that we try to keep there, then we definitely can. Before we jump over to timeline, do y'all have any questions on the equipment?
I do.
Okay.
Where are we on, the water meters?
The replacement?
Yes.
So we.
Because that was hot for a while.
Yes. So we had a contract in place to replace with the system that we have. And we came to council with that, and we had some feedback from council that they wanted us to look at maybe possibly changing that system. Honestly, we have not gone any further with that. After the budget, money's budgeted. It's one of those things that after we get through this process, then we will have to reassess whether we want to do a full-blown system replacement. Do we want to go out for bid? Do we want to keep with what we've got? And those are just questions that we're just going to have to come back and have some direction on that.
We're still contributing money to that fund though, right?
That money's there. That was a bond that we paid off.
Okay.
We issued a bond in 2008, revenue bond to pay for that system. And so it's paid off. That whole money has been depreciated. We've set aside the money in the depreciation fund. So the money is there for it.
Okay.
It's just a matter of when we proceed.
All right, and then we were, the roofs and the air conditioning we had talked about.
Yes. Now, that will be part of the CIP, and so tonight, we're just looking at equipment.
Okay.
The CIP we'll be bringing to you in a future meeting. We just kind of finalized that, in the last week or so staff is reviewing that, currently, but we'll be bringing you CIP as well.
Thank you.
I just have one question. In the capital equipment that's just kind of leapt out at me, is it Sunset Cemetery Office renovation? Is that the same thing as the bond?
So I
Or is
would
that in
have to
addition to
defer
it?
to Bray. I guess if that is, I would assume if the bond doesn't pass, that would be the renovation for that. I don't know.
Yes, ma'am. Brian Bray, your Community Services Director. Councilman Mull, yes. So staff were given the guidance, because a bond is not guaranteed, and to go ahead and list things in the budget request, and then if the bond proceeds, then they're removed, or vice versa. So yes, sir, you're gonna see a lot of double items that are in both the proposed bond package and in your proposed budget.
Okay, that's all. I was just curious. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Ms. Kerbo, I just, from having seen this before, I know in the equipment replacement fund, we do contribute to that fund regularly. Just thinking on the patrol vehicle replacement, we have 400,000 for that. How many vehicles will that buy? Is it
Is it 5?
4?
Now, it used to be 5. Things are more expensive now.
I thi-
Because unfortunately, with the patrol vehicles, the cost of the vehicle is the smallest
not
part
the-
of it.
it's not the
Yeah,
biggest thing, 'cause
It's
to
everything
fully
that's in the
equip it is
vehicle
expensive.
is what's expensive, right?
That's what I figured.
Yeah.
And the pricing on the, the replacement of the side load garbage truck, the price is based on when you order it, so.
Yes, so we can lock in that,
Lock
because
in
what
that
we're
price.
getting is getting in line to order one. And so we have to order it before they start the production, and I think Carrie said maybe January or February of '24 is when they start production. But we have to get in line now if we want to keep the pricing for the current. I think for the '23, that would be the last of, or I may be wrong, maybe it was '24.
So that's locked in, perhaps.
But we will lock that in. And so I think, Mr. Bartlett and I talked earlier, I think what we will probably do is to come to y'all maybe even as early as next week with a letter of intent, and then come back to you in a future meeting with the actual budget amendment, just so that we can issue a purchase order. We won't be spending the money until next year anyway, because until we take delivery, we don't pay.
And that would be on the 22-23 budget, right?
That would be on the current, yeah, and then we would pull it off from the 23-24, right?
We're just talking about accounting for that amount. We're not really talking about.
It's the money's there, it's just utilizing it earlier than
Right.
normal, yeah.
Okay, any public comment? Any more discussion? Okay, that concludes,
Well, do you want to, real quick, just to be on the safe side, I just want to kind of reiterate the budget timeline in case we wanted to talk about a little bit. Of course, reminder that our property tax values are due July the 25th. We will bring you on the August 1st meeting the draft budget. That will be your first look at it. August the 15th is the date that we will vote on the proposed tax rate. Now, this doesn't lock the tax rate. What this does is this sets our maximum tax rate. And so what we'll come to you and we'll say, this is the tax rate that we're proposing. Y'all adopt it. We can go anywhere from there down. We just can't go over. Something that didn't come up earlier when we were talking about the bond. Keep in mind that there will be no tax rate implication this year for that bond. The debt rate will stay at the penny that it is now for the 23-24 tax year, because we have to wait until after the election to know exactly which pieces, and then next year during this process is when we will adopt a budget for whatever we decide to issue next year. If the 44 million, if we only issue 8 million in January or February, then that's how much, taxes will go up 3 cents or whatever it is. That 17, 16 cents, unless y'all decided to do 44 million all at one time, which I know that's not going to happen, then that's going to be incrementally over future years. And I forgot to mention that earlier. So this year, the tax rate will not be impacted at all by any potential bond. Then, of course, we have Tuesdays on the 22nd and 29th that we do not currently have meetings, but if you feel the need to have more budget workshops, we are more than happy to fill those dates with that. And then again, September 5th currently is the proposed date for adopting the budget, and then 7 days later, the tax rate. All this, of course, is, incumbent on us actually getting our tax rate information by July 25th to be able to bring y'all these tax rates. So as of today, this is our schedule. If y'all feel the need for those August additional budget workshops, that's something that we need to, probably decide in the next meeting or two, and go ahead and get those scheduled. Other than that, at this point, I think the future will be bringing you some CIP items, and then you'll get to see your first draft of the budget when it's done.
okay, anybody got any more discussion? Okay, all right, okay. That concludes the regular agenda or the regular meeting, and we'll go into executive session pursuant to Texas Code Section 551.087, 551.072, and 551.071, and it is 8:30. Thank you very much. God, 8:50, and we are back in the regular agenda, and we're waiting for Mr. Bounds to get on video. Oh, he's here? Okay, all right. Okay, let's see. Okay, pursuant to Texas Code Section 551.087, no action. Item B, pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.072, no action. And then pursuant to Texas Government Code Sections 551.071 and 072, consider approval of the transfer of Central Heights Water System to Angelina and Nature's River Authority, including A, approval of interlocal agreement for acquisition of Central Heights Water System, B, approval of interlocal pump station ground lease agreement, and C, approval of interlocal contract for water services between the City of Nacogdoches and the Angelina and Nature's River Authority. I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the transfer of the Central Heights Water System to the Angelina and Nature's River Authority, including approval of the interlocal agreement for acquisition of the Central Heights Water System, the approval of the interlocal pump station ground lease agreement, and approval of the interlocal contract for water services between the City of Nacogdoches and the Angelina and Nature's River Authority.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second, and I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. This meeting at 8:52 is adjourned.